Mine's not green anymore. Oh, now it is.
It does when you talk.
Oh, I see.
Okay, I think we're live. So, called to order, meeting of the Marine Resource Task Forces, 3:01 p.m. Called to order, invocation, or I should say Pledge of Allegiance. If you can all stand, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Right. Okay, roll call. Wanna start on your side?
Robert Howell, present.
Mary Rose Spalletta, present.
Steve Johnson, here.
Greg Fossum, present.
Jennifer Rusk, present.
Rose Larkin, present.
Chad Schutz, environmental staff, present.
Very nice, Chad. Okay, so you all have the agenda in front of you. A motion to approve the agenda.
Moved.
Seconded.
Discussion?
Strict are the time limits.
Well, it's the first shot at it, and we thought we would at least put some.
I think that's part of the agenda approval, if y'all feel like something's more important and deserves more time, but
Exactly.
the
Feel
intent-
free to ask, actually.
the intent is to come prepared and items. Something needs more discussion, let's do it, but, you know, everything's a matter of resources.
I'd be of the opinion to actually give exotic vegetation more time there.
I was going to say that with Shrimp Festival and Manatee Conservation also.
Let's just see how it goes.
To abuse it, it says
Let's just go.
recommendation. No, I'm in charge of it, so yeah. So I would say that those last 5 minutes is awfully quick, but let's see how we do. All right, this is our first trial run. Okay. Any all in favor of the? We've got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Unanimous vote for approval. So previous meeting minutes.
Yeah, I saw one correction on there with the list of attendees. My name was not on there, so if you,
Okay.
just that one correction I saw.
Okay. Any others?
I didn't receive the minutes.
Tell to everyone.
He did it early. It was right after the meeting, Jen.
That was real quick. Sometimes the
Slipped it in
emails
there.
stack up on each other.
Yeah, they do.
I move the minutes be accepted with that one amendment of my name added to the attendees.
Before I move forward, I think.
Approved.
Okay, I'll second that motion as amended. Any opposition? Okay, motion carries unanimously. So let's jump in here to actually public comment. Of any public per se, we've got some guests today. Let's jump to current items. First on the agenda here is the FWC presentation. So introduce Rebecca Schneider of the FWC.
Well, again,
So nice to see you.
I have a presentation that I presented. I'm actually joined here today with Tyson, joined here by Tyson Dallas. Tyson is a regional shorebird biologist. And a reminder, I'm the regional species conservation biologist. We're both FWC. Both work in the Division of Habitat and Species Conservation, in charge of the entire Southwest region. So that spans from Hernando County all the way down here. So we're here because we are following back up with the Marine Resource Task Force after our enjoyable field trip last month. Last month we invited participants to come out and kind of walk the beach down at the southern end of Estero Boulevard on the private properties where we have nesting shorebirds nesting each year. And so The reason for the field trip was to kind of see the site for yourselves and walk through and kind of talk about what we do year after year to make sure that we have, you know, our conservation actions focused on the needs of those beach nesting birds, and that those the needs of the birds are aligned with the needs and the wishes of the private property owners as well. We also wanted to talk to the Marine Resources Task Force about the upcoming Imperiled beach nesting bird guidelines, which are a statewide regulatory document that has been approved in its current draft form by the FWC. It will be going to a second stop approval in front of the FWC commissioners during the July commission meeting. That's a change from what I told you all when we met last month. We've pushed back from May to now to July. But the idea is that during that, when that second approval happens, then we have a very comprehensive guidance document on how to conserve beach nesting birds, when permits would be required for any of your residents or properties who have beach nesting birds that intersect with beach nesting birds, and what kind of measures can be taken for that everyone's staying in compliance with the. So what I've brought with me is a presentation that adds some visuals and recaps a lot of what we talked about during that field trip. Tyson and I are both much more natural on the beach, so bear with us while we go through the presentation. It's going to seem a little bit more formal, but I hope that it can help reiterate some of the stuff that we talked about last time we met.
Just relax. That's
We're
good.
very
Life's
informal.
good. That's right.
Becky, just try and project as much as you can towards that microphone so it hears
Okay,
you. Yeah.
gotcha. That's something.
Point it more towards the back, vertically.
I'll hold it behind my hand. Okay, so we have 4 state-listed species in Florida: the American oystercatcher, the snowy plover. There we go. The black skimmer and the least tern. These 3 that are in bold on the presentation are the species that nest at the south end of Fort Myers Beach at either in the critical wildlife area or on the private properties. They are classified into 2 different life history strategies. We have colonial nesting species, which we refer to as seabirds. They fish by diving or skimming. We also have solitary nesting species. We refer to them as shorebirds. Specifically, when we're talking about all the species as a whole, we call them shorebirds. Technically, it's seabirds and shorebirds. But those solitary nesting species are, they forage on the beach, they forage in the rackline, they nest in the dunes. Chicks can feed themselves after they've hatched, and they have slightly different life histories than the colonial nesters. Notably, the shorebirds use camouflage as a predation evasion strategy for nesting, and the seabirds use the herd effect with the colonial nesting strategy. Another species of shorebird that we have in the critical wildlife area is a Wilson's plover. It's not a state-listed species, but it is a species of. Okay, so all of them nest on the beaches. They nest on barrier islands, beaches. I mean, Fort Myers Beach is a beautiful place to walk, to explore, and the birds like it just as much as your residents do. Nesting occurs from mid-February through early September. That's our statewide kind of nesting range. But in Fort Myers Beach, the plovers are the first to nest. They're going to start as early as late February, the snowy plovers. The least terns arrive in April or May, and that's when they'll begin nesting. And then shortly after that, the black skimmers, which are actually here all year round, but they don't actually start nesting until the nests are scrapes in the ground. As you all probably know, they lay their nests inside that scrape, which is a little divot in. Okay, so these species all rely on open, sandy beaches to nest. The skimmers, least terns, snowy plovers, they need these undisturbed areas of contiguous habitat in order to be successful. These habitats are becoming less and less available. I think you all know very well that there's not a lot of beach that looks like this in Fort Myers Beach any longer. Historically, the species would be able to move into new accreting beach areas. So, you know, as that sand moves, they'd be able to kind of like leapfrog over to new places where there's fresh sand while other parts are recolonized by dune vegetation. But that doesn't happen here. We really have very few options for these imperiled species to find a place that is suitable because these emergent areas are not showing up due to coastal development. So we have to really pay close attention to that habitat availability when we're focusing on managing the species to prevent disturbance and achieve our recovery goals.
Question on something you said that like open sandy, the newly created beaches are not happening because of.
Yeah, so you know, the kind of long expanses of white sandy beach really are fewer in the Southwest region than they ever have been. The development and coastal armoring and some other kind of reasons why property owners and corporations would want their beach to stay the same means that sand isn't as dynamic as it probably would be naturally. And we have re-nourishment projects that will bring that habitat back, but it obviously takes a lot of management, active management. Okay, so this is our recipe for conservation success. So we need to make sure that these birds are not subject to human disturbance. We need to manage these features of the habitat that they evolutionarily rely on. We need to also manage predation, because with the development and with the influx of people, we also have potential imbalance of that predator-prey dynamic of more raccoons, more coyotes, whatever it is that's going to have an impact on these beach nests. We need to improve coordination. That's why I'm here, building my relationship with the Marine Resources Task Force, because you are the ones who have a vested interest in the wildlife in your community. We need to make sure we're monitoring to track that our conservation actions have outcomes that we anticipate, and then keep going along, rinse and repeat. And this recipe has worked well in the CWA, of course, and it's already also worked well in the area that we refer to as the temporary refuge, which is that private property at the south. Okay, vegetation management is a really important part of achieving this recipe for success. So managing vegetation is something that is common when you are addressing the needs of any state-listed species, not just necessarily shorebirds. We manage vegetation for scrub jays, we manage vegetation for burrowing owls, we manage vegetation for gopher tortoises. All of those things require active management when their habitats aren't as widely available as they once may have been in the historical past. So this is a tool that's important. It's among many other tools that we need to use for conservation success. It should be conducted in a manner that emulates natural coastal dynamics. We want to minimize the impacts to coastal features as much as possible and carefully consider the needs of all the wildlife, not just the birds, anything even as small as the microorganisms that are in the sand. And this language comes from the Florida Beach Nesting Bird Plan. So to reiterate, managing these habitat features is common practice for imperiled species. It must be targeted and strategic and employed in areas where other factors such as disturbance, predation can also be managed. Wouldn't want to be managing for only one impact to the state-listed species without also addressing those other potential impacts. Okay, so here we are, our aerial view of your community with the temporary refuge down at the bottom. So this is exactly what I was talking about, right, Bill? So there really isn't quite as much white sandy beach as you all probably remember there being in Little Estero Island, CWA, back in the early 2000s and before. So that sand has accreted down to the south end of the island, and that accretion in combination with historic raking practices has kept this private property an open white sandy beach. These are permanent activities that has prevented the growth of vegetation. And so if you're a bird flying over the island and you see this, you probably can imagine what would lead to their decision making. They're like, oh, well, there's my habitat right there. Easy choice, right? So they're attracted to this site. And because it's on private property, the FWC has entered into an agreement with the property owners to sure that we're working in coordination with them to provide seasonal protection for that colony that that's showing up in their backyard. And the temporary refuge, it works. So these are some graphs from the past 5 or so years from 2016. They're a little bit hard to interpret because you see these boom and bust years. That's pretty normal for shorebirds. Tyson can attest to that. We've got good years, we've got bad years. But in general, the temporary refuge is leading to a productivity that's greater than 0, which means that on average, every pair is fledging a chick, right? So they may not be quite at replacement. They're not fledging 2 chicks, so aren't 2 new chicks for every 1 adult, which would be a productivity value of 1, or what we call lambda of 1. But we are getting higher than 0 productivity, right? So we're not losing individuals. They are fledging every year, and that's due to a lot of hard work with vegetation management, predation management, posting the temporary refuge, and our constant monitoring as well as coordination with the property owner. Snowy plovers probably have the toughest time. Those are those solitary nesting species. They really have a hard time. They start nesting when we still have a lot of tourism in this community. So their nests are hard to find. They're very vulnerable. They don't have that colonial effect like the other species do, and they're showing up during spring break. So it really is. They do have a tough time getting started, and those are some species that we really want to put some extra special attention on. That zigzag on the black skimmer graph represents 2 declines in breeding success, one in 2019 to a great horned owl predation, and one in 2021 last year due to a disease that was afflicting the juvenile birds. That's why that graph looks that way.
Why is the y-axis the number of chicks per pair?
Yeah, productivity, number of chicks per adult, right?
Yeah, this one's.
So we calculate, really we should calculate it number of chicks per pair, but the shape of the graph is the same.
The removal of the sand spurs around the black skimmer colony, how was that effective?
Yeah, so we have taken actions to reduce sand spur growth in the temporary refuge every year up until 2021, and that was the year that the sand spurs seemed to have become a problem for the chicks. I'll talk about that a little bit more.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so again, this is an agreement with the property owners, as you all know. So we're taking these conservation actions in accordance with the wishes of the property owners. And it is their request that the beach be returned in the same condition in which it was before the birds arrived. So like I explained to you all last month, we basically will post off this temporary refuge, this nesting area. The property owners hand over managerial responsibility to the FWC for the duration of the nesting period, and then we return it, the same way you return your campsite when you're done camping. We return it the way we found it, if not better. So it is groomed, and that grooming is done out of season, and because the property owners elect to groom, use mechanical treatment to reduce growth, they're attracting the birds year after year after year again. And we support that for now because it's the only place where the birds are able to nest. So strategic removal of the vegetation is one way to make sure we're maintaining beach nesting habitat for these birds. Vegetation removal is not appropriate for all areas of the beach. Obviously, dunes are what we want on the beach. Dunes help with erosion. They help with, making sure that those Wilson's plovers and snowies not so much. They actually don't like dunes. Making sure that those Wilson's plovers have the habitat that they need, and it obviously protects your coast and your community. So the native dune vegetation does play a role in stabilizing the beach. It provides essential habitat for the wildlife, and removal or destruction of native dune vegetation, as you all know, is regulated by the DEP. The mechanical treatment that's done at these private properties is permitted by the DEP. They have a CC that you actually all are the permittee and you permit the property owners. So the management techniques that we recommend for and implement at Carlos Beach, the temporary refuge, they must comply with guidance from the DEP according to their permit, guidance from the FWC, of course, and your own ordinance. So this is from the Town of Fort Myers Beach Code of Ordinances. Management means a series of techniques applied to maintain the viability of species location. Techniques include but are not limited to controlled burning, planting, removing exotic vegetation, controlling exotic species, maintaining hydrological regimens, and monitoring. Okay, so as we discussed when we were out in the field last month, black skimmers were subject to a suspicious chick mortality event last season. So this left the juvenile black skimmers with leg infections that were later diagnosed and by veterinary scientists as septic arthritis. So the septic arthritis created this inflammation of the joints that you see in this picture. And the bacteria that was causing that sepsis was isolated as Staphylococcus aureus as the dominant bacteria. That's a naturally occurring staph. It's on all of our skin right now. It's probably on the skin of the birds themselves. But through examination, we found, or veterinary staff found, that that bacteria was entering the bloodstream and causing the infection through wounds possibly created by sandspurs. So the sandspurs, because the black skimmers were moving through a habitat that was overgrown with this colonizing dune vegetation, the sandspurs were catching in their feathers, rubbing against their legs, and being kind of the gateway for this infection. So you all know this, PSA sandspur is a native grass. It's a native dune vegetation. It's supposed to be here. No one likes it, but it is intended to be here. In fact, it has a really, really genius evolutionary strategy, which is don't walk on me because I'm the pioneering vegetation for what will be dune vegetation in the future, right? So basically, dunes thrive when they are undisturbed. They don't want people walking on them. Sandspurs are like, okay, I gotcha, like making sure that people aren't walking around. Because this site, the temporary refuge, is managed year after year after year, the property owners are keeping it in an early successional state. So it's basically always going to have sandspur because the sandspur is always going to be, okay, time to colonize, time to colonize. And the mechanical actions are probably exasperating the tilling and the farming of that species. It does play an important role, but when it's not appropriately managed for, then it could cause something as tragic as this. So as you can imagine, we have vegetation management goals that are pretty inextricably linked to the success of this temporary refuge agreement. We want to maintain nesting habitat for the colonial nesting birds that call this place home. We want to make sure that we maintain a positive relationship with the private property owners and encourage them to continue to manage their beach in favor of beach nesting birds. We need to conduct vegetation removal in a manner that is safe for the birds, for the beachgoers, for everyone involved, but also effective. We want to reduce these interactions between black skimmer chicks and sandspurs, and we want to limit the growth of this invasive crow's foot grass. This is a picture from last year. This is, I think you can tell if you look closely, it's majority crow's foot grass, which is a non-native invasive species. This stuff loves getting chopped up and buried in the sand, which is what we're doing with the tilling and the raking. It really thrives with that disturbance. We're propagating it, and we're getting a situation like this, which clearly is not an attractive nesting area for black skimmers. And that's that. I hope that, I know I took up probably all the time I was allotted, but I'm sure there are questions specifically about vegetation management because that's what we discussed last time I was here. And I'm happy to engage in more conversation or dialogue with that if you all have any thoughts.
What would happen to that land, say if it was year long, just let to grow? Would it be an area for the birds to nest, or would it become a non-nesting area?
It would become similar, I predict, it would be similar to the CWA. So we still have least terns nesting in the CWAs, very small colonies, but I'm gonna go back, to the aerial here. So we have mangroves and dune vegetation in the CWA. You can see the boundary there, and you can see kind of on that west side of where the yellow circle is, it just stops. So all of that like naturally wants to continue going, that darker, lower lying area, it's the lagoon that wants to connect. All of this stuff is just, nature of the dynamic system that is Little Estero Island. So my prediction would be that dune vegetation, the sea oats and other species colonize.
There would be less nesting area for the birds of concern, though.
Yes,
So by doing that, you're artificially creating a nesting area, not recapturing a natural nesting area. You are creating an unnatural nesting area.
This is an intensively managed site, and we manage this because there is no alternative nesting area for this colony. This is the largest seabird colony in Southwest Florida. This is the biggest stronghold of black skimmers and natural beach that we have in pretty much anywhere peninsular Gulf Coast Florida. So we, because if I were to pan out and demonstrate that there is no colonial nesting habitat within an appropriate vicinity of this place, we put intensive management the way it is, and that just so happens to be in compliance with the wishes of the property.
Okay, while we're on this slide, if we go down that red line all the way to the next patch of sand, why is that not a good nesting area?
I think the beach in front of the window, right?
Right.
Yeah, that is a beach that has much more recreational use. So it is also raked, but there's so many more people that use that beach, visitors who are staying in the hotel, vacationers, etc., compared to the private property, which doesn't get the same level of use because it's only the residents who are using that. So the preferable habitat is that.
Well, if there weren't as many people, that could become another colony.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, they have strong site fidelity, though, so if they're like, this was good for me last year, it's going to be good for me next year, if they fly over and they see two options, they're going to go with the one that they know they've had success at.
That's also mostly underwater in the
That's that big lagoon we were talking about the other day.
But it's really wide, though,
It's got
not
a
all of it.
frontage, yeah.
But
Have
anyway,
you guys put any thought, naturally, it seems like Bowditch Point wants to grow. And extending or just moving the route of the channel out and allowing Bowditch, especially with the new beach renourishment coming up, like you said, they're picky, like going to the same spot, but I see black skimmers there all the time in different times of the season. Is that a place that we might be able to start looking as another, not an alternative, but another place to start keeping an eye on? Because there's a lot of just sand there, especially at low tide, and if we renourish some of that, I think it would be just more space for them.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, in 2020, when the beaches were fairly closed,
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly an option.
If we see nesting, I don't mean to interrupt you just real quick before I lose the thought. If we see nesting, should we call you guys so we can rope it off and just keep people away and stuff? Is that the preferred way? Okay, what were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, creating an additional area, I mean, adding more beach certainly create additional habitat. And there, it's hard to say, but
Right.
Definitely make area for them. Are places in the region that create habitat, and the birds just haven't colonized there yet. But that's not to say they never would. If something ever happened to this beach, I don't know, maybe direct hit from a hurricane and that beach is gone, they're going to look for another place as close by as possible. If Bowditch Point was twice the size it is now, all right, well, miles away, there's a nice beach up here. Also, in the critical wildlife area, there's a very small colony. It's very small. Could also start getting like some satellite colony, start up as a small satellite colony.
I just mean on a conservation standpoint, it's already a park. You know, it's already no dogs allowed kind of situation, so I'm just thinking,
There used to be nests there,
yeah,
snowy plovers and black skimmers.
Yeah.
And then the vegetation grew in, and then the county came in and they kept trying to rake it and keep it clean, but the vegetation over.
I mean, the downside to Bowditch Point is that it's much more, as you mentioned, it's much more, like the Wyndham, it's much more public than Carlos Beach. So you're gonna get a lot more visitors. Starting to see signs of nesting, we would get ahead of the game, posting areas to keep people out of those areas. But I mean, and if they're reported, birds would. Hey, there's no one there. Let's try nesting there.
plovers there nesting, what, last year, right? 1 or 2?
2 years.
Was it 2
Not
years
last
ago?
year, but in 2020, there was at least one. Our critical wildlife area biologist saw more than one pair. That they're, but, you know, that like that was primarily due. Thinking back to the Wyndham thing too, Craig, or you might know more, but I think they also rake much more intensively at the Wyndham than they do at Carlos Beach. They're only raking a week at Carlos, like Carlos Point and Castle Beach and stuff. Because it's so wet, they sometimes don't get to rake more than every other week or something. Wet it is. I believe they rake at the Wyndham.
Regularly, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just appealing to because of the constant disturbance.
Plus they rake through summer.
Yeah. So if they weren't raking near often and it wasn't quite as busy.
You know, I appreciate the idea of Bowditch Point being that it's, you know, it's a park, so it can be managed in a way where you don't have to necessarily deal with the homeowners, but it also tends to erode there. So, you know, there's regular renourishment there and probably when the nest, and they put vegetation in there to try to
They help the creek, yeah.
The beach itself is growing, but the dunes are eroding. Is that what you mean? Because the beach keeps reaching out into the channel. They just wedged that a couple weeks ago. Or
just like
months
around the
ago.
groin,
Oh, I see what you
around the
mean.
rocks in
Yeah.
that area.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the other thing you talk about moving the channels. They put the groin there thinking they would keep the channel clear, and the sand would accrete on the other side of the channel, and the sand decided, nope.
They should have put it out further like a Yeti.
We got a question, Becky, for you. It seems like the lease terns had a couple years of a negative trend in productivity. Is that the 3 species, it seemed to have more of a negative direction?
I started around the time of the negative decline,
Oh,
so
great.
I'm not really entirely familiar with why they were doing so well. So yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
We're not blaming you. Right.
Yeah. That
So,
looked bad.
This doesn't really deal with total numbers of nests, this is the productivity for a pair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could reach saturation of a nesting.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. Could be really a whole suite of reasons why greater numbers of skimmers that are making the less real turns, and so, I mean it could be a variety of something we really.
And good to point out that this is representative productivity. So we, you know, over the course of the time frame that's displayed here, we've had as a range of at least 150 to 250 pairs of lease turns at the site, depending on the year. 100 to 300 pairs of black skimmers. So double all these numbers. You want like actual numbers of birds. Last year we had 182 lease nests and 120 black skimmer nests.
Still have good numbers of birds and I know last year I can't remember what storm that was, that hit right around 4th of July, which is really around the time when least are going to have their fledges. I think that could be significant last year. Once that storm moved in, the terns disappeared. They didn't come back after the storm. Really, most of our birds things down. Wrapping things up. I think that that could have had an impact too.
Good. I got one other question, and it's kind of the million-dollar question. That wasn't for the Big Carlos management plan down there. I mean, last time we were visiting, the discussion we had, I think a lot of the discussion centered around the means of the vegetation management. So was that finalized? Was that?
Yeah, we are doing a deep dive. So I of course acknowledge the receipt of the letter from the Marine Force to not use glyphosate on the beef. We have investigated options for mechanical removal. Obviously, that's what is in place already, but mowing has not been explored. Obviously, mowing, even before we consider going that direction, recognize that you cannot mow over a black skimmer nest. We will not be able to mow or reduce vegetation with posted area while the birds are present with mechanical methods. We have we've connected with our plant management folks who are a sister section to our wildlife diversity conservation section, consulted with them about what their recommendations for coastal environments are. One important thing that we learned is that acetic acid, vinegar, and salt are not cannot be applied as an herbicide. It is a state and federal regulation to use those substances because they do not have an EPA label. So we cannot use salt or vinegar. So that's completely off the table.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we also learned, interestingly enough, though, that both NaCl and acetic acid have a higher toxicity rating than glyphosate or any other material that we've researched. So just because we put vinegar on our salads does not mean that it is safe, and is actually much more toxic to animals than it is to humans. So we won't be using those substances. One synthetic herbicide that we've been exploring is called imazapyr. This is intriguing because technology for that herbicide, it targets a metabolic pathway involved in photosynthesis. So it actually does not, it has zero effect on any plant cell, or excuse me, animal cell, or anything that doesn't photosynthesize. So it basically is inert to those other organisms. It doesn't attack the foliage. So glyphosate, for example, is a generalist that attacks the foliage, kills the plant after it's emerged. This is something that attacks the basically that developmental pathway, so that it actually never emerges, and it can have an effect on dormant seeds. Its toxicity rating is lower than any other rated herbicide for use in. So I definitely want to talk to you all more about that. I don't know if this is the best setting, but the property owners, we have been meeting with them about a plan to make sure that it's acknowledged that the property owners will not continue with this temporary posting agreement if the vegetation is not reduced to their expectations. It's becoming clear that.
Could you repeat the name of
Becky,
that?
just make sure you're
Imazapyr.
talking into the microphone.
I figured.
Got a message, sorry.
Oh, it does, with an eye?
So so the material that we're exploring is called a mazapir. It has a lower toxicity rating than any counterpart synthetic herbicide. It is twice as low as acetic acid, and it is like 500 times lower toxicity than nicotine or caffeine. Those are all what are called LD50 numbers, which is a way of ranking toxicity. We have oral LD50 and dermal LD50 for a lot of these things that I can bring up if you're interested. So I think what's particularly intriguing about this chemical is that it can be applied before the birds arrive, and it'll stay inert in the system, and it won't wash away, it won't get into the water, it won't get into the food, it'll just stay there, and it persist, and it can be active, targeting those plants for 4 to 6 months.
Oh, so would that eliminate spraying during season?
Yeah, so it is usable for broadcast or spot treatment, but our plant management folks recommended spot treatment, and it can be used in season if needed, if we do see those emergent plants coming up. But the idea would be that that we can apply it before the posting is in place.
So does a persistent marine environment would have an effect on seagrasses?
No, because it's my understanding is that it will not wash out of the soil. So it will stay in, it needs to be applied on dry soil, and it'll stay in the dry soil, and it won't wash away.
Even if it's really porous and low in organic compounds like this?
It might bind with something, I mean, the molecular binds.
Binds to or something.
You need a crowbar to get it off, right? Okay. Okay, well, good. I think the ball's in our, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, Chad just asked me to repeat the important point that I want to make is that the property owners that we've been in communication with have made sure that I understand that they will not participate in the temporary refuge posting for the birds if the vegetation in that posted area is not managed to their standard. So the idea is that we forego management throughout the nesting season the way we did last year, then they are out of the.
If it's a repeat of last year, then we're out, okay.
So what would be their mitigation to satisfy FDEP's permit?
I didn't know there was mitigation involved.
Okay, I'll ask FDEP if that was a quid pro quo, if they just allow the tilling.
Oh, right, yeah. So since the raking, my understanding, and I'm not a DEP employee, but what I've communicated so far to the property owners is that provision to do mechanical outside of the posted area includes the need to do. So the fact that they have permission from the DEP to rake throughout the season, they will not also receive permission to spray in a spraying is just where raking cannot.
Right. Speaking more towards the authorization to till, I was under the impression that there was a quid pro quo allows them to till.
I'll have to go back.
That they don't allow the posting, they're not allowed to till, is that?
My understanding, I mean, I don't.
Won't allow both, I think.
I think typically whenever there's some sort of intrusive impact like tilling, I believe DEP is looking for some sort of mitigation, whether that's area to dune if you don't have one, or bird rookery to help FWC in this imperiled species, etc.
I don't know that language.
Good, looks like it's in our court now. We'll look into the Mazapir, and if there's any issues, I'm sure we'll reach out to you. So thank you for answering that, though. That's great.
Yeah, of course, and I really hope that we can talk in more depth. It's something that we're learning about. Like, we're conservation biologists, so we're not so we're looking to the experts within our agency to help with those answers, and this one seems really promising. I know that I don't have much time left, but what I really want to get out of this presentation is communicating with you all that the upcoming beach nesting bird guidelines will affect your constituents. Right? We've got beach cleaning in the guidelines. They may not be in the first version of the guidelines, but they will likely be in the guidelines going forward. So anyone who does raking on the beach will be affected by these guidelines. We also have, other conditions, mitigation options, permit conditions that may apply to your community. So we're definitely looking to the Marine Resource Task Force for being somewhat of a liaison on that. Of course, we talk to the property owners directly, but others in the community don't have the same snorkel nesting that these properties do. Well, they need the information. Another important part of the guidelines is the need for qualified bird monitors. So we need people, when a disturbance is likely to occur and is permitted by the FWC, condition of the permit will be that a qualified bird monitor is present while that disturbance is happening, right? So that person, for example, would walk in front of the tractor, make sure there's no nests, make sure the birds aren't, flushing off their nest for too long. So we need qualified bird monitors, and I really think that this is something that the community would be a community supported position, right? It could be something that the town of Fort Myers Beach can offer to your constituents, your property owners, when they need to meet their permit conditions. In other cases, it's someone, usually in the case of, for example, joint coastal permits, JC Army Corps will hire, or the contracted, the project will hire a consultant. So that's obviously an option if there's no volunteer qualified bird monitors available. And I think it would be a really great addition to the town of Fort Myers Beach.
You get qualified on myfwc.com or?
Qualified by Tyson. Yeah, and because
Can we get an email with their contact info?
Yeah. So qualified bird monitors, the conditions for what qualifies you as a bird monitor are listed in the guidelines. I think they're also on our website. But to put it very basically, a bird monitor will have to demonstrate that they can find a nest, that they know how to post, that they know the normal signs of breeding behavior, and all of that is vetted through the regional shorebird biologist. And this is the year, if there's anyone in the community at the service, this year to get trained up, because if the guidelines are effective next year, then we only have the one season, right? So we only have 2022. This is going to be the community.
We can't train additional to have qualified bird monitoring guidelines are put into place, trained up.
Table that you can unleash.
I just get a little, scientific Googling here, and they were talking about this imazapyr. The spelling is nothing like you'd expect it to be.
What is
But
the spelling?
it's IMAZAPYR.
Oh, that was way off.
Which I hope,
Pretty close.
They use wise in
Information.
I just hope they don't use it in Wordle.
Later, but I'm sure.
So it says, there's a question here about is imazapyr, does imazapyr have residual? And it says, imazapyr is an herbicide that can be used in irrigation canals to control a range of aquatic weed species. However, its residual nature combined with its phototoxicity to crops in low concentrations means that the water in the canals must be carefully managed following application. So that gives me some concerns, but not sure what they mean by low concentrations either.
Spraying into the canal as well. I mean, it's for aquatic,
Right, they probably
it
use
sounds
the,
like. I mean,
we're not well above the height.
And everything that's been communicated to us about imazapyr is to apply to soil. And I think John was even pretty clear that it must be applied to soil to work in the.
I think I remember hearing about that, like, one of the things with glyphosate is that it binds with organic compounds. and that's how it dissipates in soil, but with our sandy soil, a lot of organic compounds, so it tends to pass through into.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Oh, before you go, I have one more question. I've heard a rumor that the ban on birds in the critical wildlife area is going to end, and dogs will be allowed in the critical wildlife area. Is that in fact
Never
true?
change. No,
Never
never.
believe rumors.
Yep, never will we allow dogs in any critical wildlife area. That's written into the Florida statute.
Thank you.
As long
I
as
wanted
it
to
still
hear.
has that designation of wildlife area.
Right. If it's not a CWA anymore, then your ordinance may still apply, but which I know also prohibits dogs, but
There's no plan to change. It is a CWA. It will.
it is a CWA. CWAs are contingent on property owner agreement, and the Bureau of State Lands there's a Estero Island to be state lands, but I understand that that is being contested right now, so that's the only reason.
Thank you. Hope your good work.
Yes.
It's okay, we're
We're
going to stick
behind
around for the rest of the agenda. I know I took up most of it. But
No, absolutely. You're welcome to stay as long as you like. Thank you.
Did find a fact sheet about the thing, if you guys want me to email it to, it's a whole thing about all the chemical makeup and everything about it, so.
Perfect. Okay, good. Excellent. Well, let's jump into the budget. This should be interesting. So, from my understanding, we've got about 10K that was set aside. Do you know if that's a current balance?
I believe so, yes. Nobody's made it.
Menos? Okay. So I think the email I sent was to come prepared with numbers and ideas and we can try to put something together so we know how to allocate that budget for things. Anybody have a?
What have we spent money on besides the pop-up? That's, in past years, we've spent money on,
Well, the largest
Nothing.
was a bag. I mean, one year we did
The
the,
bags, right,
one year we
okay.
did recyclable bags.
Right.
Or not, I'm sorry.
Received a donation from the foundation, so I don't think the town.
We've hit the budget, touched $1 yet. Okay. Good. So yeah, in the past, I mean, as long as I've been here, and Bill would know better, but the most major thing we've done was the bags, right?
And we really haven't had a budget. I mean, every item we had to go in front of town council
Yes,
and ask money.
right.
I think the first year I was in Murph, or maybe the second, we had a budget. And I think we didn't use much of the money. I think certainly you have, bags can be a fallback.
Hmm?
The vegetation, and that's something that also can gobble up a lot of money. I mean,
how much does the pop-up need, Jen? Supplies?
I did a budget for CF of supplies that I had needed, and a CF, FMB Community Foundation, and gave me $1,000. There's still a lot of things that just on that list. I think if I may talk about the budget and some of the things, some of the ideas I have. I know that we were talking about a Marine Resource Task Force pamphlet. I think that is still something I need because I get a lot of questions about the Marine Resource Task Force. I notice with a lot of the things I hand out, if something is just basically information of do's and do nots, they're not quite really interested. I think if we had something that gave them, a little bit of fun, for example, a little seashell guide, or, just, it has to, I guess you have to give a little for them to be interested in some of the topics. And so I'd like to see a pamphlet that is talking about, sea dunes and seashells and turtle time.
When I volunteer at Manatee Park, they have 2 posters and a workbook and a coloring book. I could see about getting some of those or where they get them to get a price on those. 'Cause they're, and the kids love them.
I think the Marine Resource Task Force pamphlet should, we should start working on that, and I'm not sure what the budget would be for that. I have no idea. I definitely think that's.
Might even be something they donate, because they have so many.
I think the point, you're saying the current,
The
MRF
current
brochure.
MRF brochure is not interesting.
Right, so you're talking about the one that we've discussed in the past
I think
about,
we should revisit another, some better ideas on more appealing a way that people would want to pick it up and take it with them, whether it's a little seashell guide or on the back, or just, something more informational if they're visiting here.
I'll just, because we had something that I'm still kind of working on in the background,
on your to-do list.
this national park style brochure. It's a big fold out, but it has a lot of, and I agree with you completely. Telling people what not to do is not going to encourage them to read it. If you give them the content, drives them to read it, then you're trying to create empathy for the environment, and so it's a really good way to do it. I think we have a lot of good stories.
There's one that the Sea Turtle Conservancy has. It's on the outside. It says "Color Me," and it's you can color a sea turtle, and then on the inside are fun facts about the different species of turtles. Something like that. Just maybe each page have something about native plants and what to plant, what not to plant, or plant this, not that. Little seashell guide. I know I keep repeating that because that seems to be. I think I had 40 copies, and they all went yesterday.
An
People love
identifier.
that, and they're identifiers,
birds.
right? Just something that appeals to a little bit more. And I've got some ideas, but.
It seems like, the other thing is an identifier guide for birds, because you hear a lot of people say, you overhear
Sorry.
people saying,
Yes.
look at all those seagulls, and you're looking at it, you don't see a single gull.
An identifier.
I went through 30. I went through 33 seashore nesting guides yesterday too. So that stuff goes very quickly.
And one I really like is the Be a Beach Hero. It's not, we do something like that too, the specific us. That's really well done brochure too.
I know I didn't do good with the national one. Could I take a crack at making just a small fold handout?
Sure, I'll email you the different things that I'm interested in seeing on there.
I would think about, I think what we want to do, the problem is if you, like we did before, you came out with the trifold and the 8.5 by 11 thing. There's just not a room there to really tell the story.
But if it's
I don't
geared
think we need a
towards,
whole story. I think just, small information. I don't think they are picking that up to read a book. They're, I think if you add something positive and then say, pick up 5, leave only your footprints. Pick up 5, pieces of garbage on the beach while you're there. It doesn't have to be a book. It just needs to be informational and
it fun.
appealing.
I know, I don't expect people to be as geeky as I am, but I get those national park, park brochures and
Yeah,
every word.
recovery, yeah.
Maybe even a map of the island.
Would probably be in the,
That's kind of what the
brochure,
proposal was
yeah.
before. Alcador was at is, number one is, I got to the point where I don't have the graphic arts ability.
I think it would probably, no offense, Rob, but I actually, if we've got a budget, I wouldn't mind actually going to a graphic designer to maybe do it not that you wouldn't do it properly, but just maybe that if we're going to do this, to move ahead and take some of our ideas to a graphic designer to actually maybe come up with some ideas. And that's, I have a feeling gonna, be, I don't expect it to be that expensive, but again, I've only done an advertisement when I.
For budgeting purposes, I would just say, how many pamphlets do you think you need? And then if
For the
there's
year?
graphic design services needed, then we can, for that.
I'd even say, let's just get the
For
buckets.
the year
I would say just
before
get the
October.
buckets together, and then we can, we're not gonna complete it today, that's for sure, based on the time we have too, but, just get the buckets together to say this much for outreach, which would include anything to do with the pop-up, obviously, that's the major outreach. Want to put something aside for vegetation management? Do we want to do, I mean, what really do you hope to accomplish with that? And then if we say, okay, out of the 10, you've got 5, 3, 2, whatever it is, and then you'd have to flesh out where it's headed.
And no offense taken, Jen, at all,
Okay,
but I
good.
did just make a identifier for pink shell.
Oh, cool.
And I'll send it to you. Let me know if you like it, and if you like that style,
Oh,
then,
it's gotta actually go through Chad, and then
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Chad can send it to the committee that we can
Okay.
all approve on.
Because some of the outreach, I mean, it's kind of like you said, niche pieces that I think you're aware of now what's needed, because a lot of, obviously, is donated from,
Yes,
Government
everything,
agencies,
right,
yeah.
the only thing I've been out, I think, is, from the town is our Fort Myers. And I can tell you, when I was just asked, the Florida DEP is gonna be sending us loads of stuff, including backpacks, and a lot of this has to do with manatee protection and boating. And so I'm very excited about that. Be prepared, because I gave the town's address on that one. So that's really exciting. And they asked, they don't know what we do at the pop-up. They don't know the actual pedestrian traffic that we, the people that we talk to. And I just kind of, have been trying to pay attention to how much stuff we've been giving out. And basically, FWC, we gave away Turtle Time coloring books. We get 100 in a bundle, and we have given close to 200 out in a month. So it's a lot of stuff that we go through.
Does that cost us anything, Jen?
Pardon me?
Do we pay for them? No, but
No,
just,
this is
they was
all,
donated.
yeah, this is all through FWC, Ding Darling, this is all stuff that's been given to us. I believe they get federal grants on this.
so let's talk about the buckets. Let's outreach, right?
I have one that's related, because a lot of the stuff, and mine was like making a donation to Sanibel, to possibly Ding Darling or the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Group, because all of these booklets that we hand out basically every week at the pop-up are from organizations or groups on Sanibel. Like the one on snowy plovers is printed by the city of Sanibel.
They actually get grants that pay for that. They don't pay for those. They actually get federal grants that pay for that stuff.
That's not what it says here. It says it's funded by the city of Sanibel.
Oh, maybe that one. Oh, no, it could be the snowy
But the other
plover
ones,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe the other one.
I mean, there are grants available. I mean, one of the rules with the business rules with the town manager I've talked to is that grants got to be worth the work, right? You don't want to go and spend $5,000 to get a $2,000 grant. The process of applying for it.
Right, and they
Yeah,
may
it goes
get the
without saying.
grant and still be able to put that it's funded by them because they're getting the grant, so it's funded by them. It might,
But things also pop up, and some things that make it easier, like I know the a Coastal Heartland group, they've got money for grants, and they know where to find it. You can get other organizations that are willing to do it maybe without making it too formal of a process, but, the idea of, I like the idea of putting some kind of something in your budget for at least initial graphic arts or kind of brochure, because you got to have something before you're going to print anything, you got to know what you're going to print.
exactly.
Cost.
If I may, I have something at the front desk that is also pertaining to the budget. If I may just walk out and grab it real quick.
Please do.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
I think we all agree it's fine. If you have to go to the bathroom,
One thing
that's open too.
we should make sure is that we use digital material, since everybody carries a cell phone, as much as possible, and not use paper. And make sure if whatever we do print on is recyclable.
maybe get some QR codes that they could scan at the pop-up, and then it pops up on their phone, the shell identifier, the bird identifier, everything.
I like that idea. I like that better than handing out
A
paper.
big
aren't-
poster, and then
Right.
the QR. I
That's
mean,
it.
One thing about that, though, is some people really still do like the paper, and I think you can make fairly biodegradable paper. And
phones on
one
the
idea
beach.
with the grander brochures, you have things in there like from the Public Safety Committee. So Public Safety Committee now has a brochure, MRF has a brochure,
You could make them
Pearldham has a
printable
brochure that
too.
you can make one, your one that kind of displaces the other ones.
You can make it printable so they can get it at home and print it out, or, not on top of, something tangible at the moment too.
And another thing that I've really dropped the ball on working on myself, is an idea that we create, the vacation rentals, they have the 3-ring binder and they put all like the house rules and all that kind of stuff. And there's town rules in there, is that we provide filler for it. So we have a chapter on birds, a chapter on turtles, and then the town even gets binders and then distributes those to anybody who has a vacation rental who wants it, and then they can put their own section in there about recommended restaurants and house rules, et cetera, et cetera.
Would our budget be able to pay for something like a QR code that people on with their phone could go to that would link them to a MRF page that would, or pages that would, discuss if they're interested in native planting here on Fort Myers Beach or seashells, or could go to those different things? Is that something that the town's budget would, or is that something we can request? And
There already is a QR code on the signs on the native plant demonstration garden. Takes it to a town site. And I don't think I think it's generally environmental. I don't think it's specific about native plants, but I think it does go to a landing site, and then it's already there.
Jen created a native plants page that make the whale.
Yep. So we've done that before. I don't think it needed enough. I mean, I think it's, you go, the QR code is pretty, it creates a lot of staff time to put together a specific page.
would our budget be paying for staff time? I mean, that's,
I wouldn't think that level of details really necessary. I would concentrate your budget on a few things that you need something either physical or some outside person like a graphic artist.
okay.
Really the legwork. If you're going to buy buckets and ants and that kind of stuff.
I was given this book, and it's BFF, Beach Flippers and Friends, and Flippers and Feathers. It's a Beach Friends Forever publication presented by Turtle Watch and Shorebird Monitoring, and it's a great little handout that it just has, just great information on seashore birds and tried calling the number, but it was no longer in service, and I don't see that this is copyrighted.
I saw Anna Maria on the front page.
Yeah, so I'll try calling Anna Maria, but I think something like this for the pop-up would be.
Certainly, Jennifer, with your time in the pop-up, you have a unique insight into what people are interested in. And it seems like I'm hearing that it's really, you should aim towards kids. They're the ones who are.
Oh, actually, yesterday I didn't think that our pop-up at Newton Park would be very successful, considering it was quite chilly and overcasted. It was by far the busiest pop-up we've ever had. I can't even count how many people. It was nuts. We couldn't even get the information out. We had people lined up to come into the tent. So it was people that wanted information on plants. It was people that wanted information on the seashore nesting birds. It was people wanting information on wildlife. It was a great success, and I realized that shouldn't poo-hoo if it's a little dreary outside, because I think people they weren't going to hang out on the beach. They were looking and walking on the beach looking for stuff to do. So it was a great turnout.
So I think what I'm hearing is a lot of this is outreach that the budget will be targeted for. So unless there's, another major project that you're considering, like vegetation management or invasive removal or something like that.
What about field trips? Would we be able to use any money from the budget to help out with field trips? And I guess, I don't know.
Field trip.
So, well, I was going to bring this up in my items, but I'll just quickly say that I, after doing my permit holding, virtual permit holders meeting, I had seen that a gentleman named Zach Westfall, a coastal scientist and geologist for the Pinellas County Environmental Management, and I thought, I contacted him, told him what we were doing here. They're very interested, and I had spoke with them about if they would be interested in us coming up there and showing what we do with environmental educational outreach. They said absolutely, and so I was, going to bring that up today to see. I told them I would go to my committee and ask for approval, or if anyone wanted to join for a field trip up there to help them come up with.
I think they might want to come down here, live in person. I mean, just saying.
Well, yeah,
I mean, as far as
But they have
absorption of
lots
vegetation.
areas. They have lots of areas.
A lot of beaches, yeah, Nellis, yeah. It's true, so you'd see more than one, you're saying, yeah, potentially.
I don't know if that money from the budget.
I don't know, I mean, I have no
Could be
idea
used for
what,
that.
what rules and regulations surround advisory board, budgets that are for the taxpayers.
Does anyone here?
I think you can always ask.
Who do
Okay.
we ask?
Council? Or if you have something that you think is really, if you want to come in front of council and say, well, we know that you'll support shores and buckets and vegetation management, but then, we want to do something else. And maybe, the thing is, if you want something like, something educational, something you learn about, maybe something to work through the Mount House, because they already have a program where they get, there's something specific you want to know about as a committee, and they can probably arrange to get somebody in and you can do the Mount House.
Please, the chairman, I had an idea.
Yes, go, yeah, it would please me tremendously, Chad, please carry on.
So flashlights are an issue during sea turtle season. Any night I go out, it's probably 20, at least, dozens of people I could, stop.
White
et
LEDs,
cetera.
yeah.
Maybe, it's tough with the code. I mean, the code basically says no flashlights. However, I think, some value offering turtle-safe long wavelength flashlights. You have a loaner program with the hotels. Annabelle passes out filters for phones.
That's not, I mean, that,
Yeah, my understanding is that doesn't necessarily make them long.
exactly,
So-
no.
It's kind of like, are the long wavelength flashlights kosher? Technically not, but it's a lot better. Maybe
Right.
if you're just reducing those bright LED flashlights. I remember telling one of the many that I told, and I've had, lots of different reactions, but one little girl, her face looked so crushed whenever I told them that they had to turn it off. I just gave her my turtle flashlight and have a good night and whatever. So, I mean, fast sometimes at night
Love it.
whenever they're shelling, but
I love that idea.
I'm working with it at Pink Shell to get.
Owners, okay, I love it.
Are they really turtle safe? Or do they just,
Well,
I don't see them when
I
I
mean, as
put
long
the
as they're-
turtle viewer on.
as long as they're
You
narrow,
can
Okay,
see
good,
it. You actually can. You can see the little red
I did it from a
dot.
ways away, and
Yeah,
it was
you
pretty good. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good.
But we know what to do with those flashlights. We know not to shine them right into turtles' eyes. So if we were to, give out these, or even loaners, they would have to understand still the rules of just can't approach wildlife, birds, or.
but they wouldn't react from a distance, which is what
Right,
happens now. I mean, those are bright white LED
Yeah,
flashlights. I mean, some of them are really torches, I'm telling you. So I think that would help, in my opinion, but,
Flying alone helps.
I mean, it's not that the turtle can't see it, it just doesn't react to it.
right.
I guess when it comes to the budget, I would like, I'm going to request that we set aside, say, $1,000 for pamphlet or material or a graphic designer, maybe 2,000. Where we start, just so we can move on.
That's for the you're saying,
Yes.
brochure, right? That's, yeah. Is that in the wheelhouse? I mean, based on your FGCU and Blair Witherington's wife, and, I mean, you had that whole thing going. Are they still all, is that?
I've been in contact with FGCU, and actually they gave me they gave like a student assignments. there was some miscommunication, so they came up with trifolds, and one was targeting, like, okay, you just moved to the beach, so homeowners, planting all this, someone else was like for a visitor, or someone else was, for, so there are all kinds of different targets, and I think their assignment was, here's your target, come up with a brochure.
Okay.
Which is a good idea, but not at all what I was asking for.
Practical for, what we're after, okay.
And I get the idea that, so this group is like Anna Maria Island's version of Turtle Time.
Correct, yeah.
So I guess that falls under outreach, but yeah, I think that's great. I'll mark her down here for what would be suitable.
And another thing too is, that I think was kind of, thought we're gonna get anyway outside the budget, but it's on the budget, is we want to come up with a custom turf tent. Now it's a town tent, right? Or are you just using the generic one?
It's a generic one.
Well, somebody talked about if you want to come up, or order another
Replacement
town,
of
a
the
town
Guy
tent
Harvey
for
cover,
your
you
use.
mean?
Yeah, the cover, the gazebo thing.
So I had spoken with Jenny Dexter about the town tent or getting more of our logo, and she had said that those were really much bigger and heavier, probably harder for me personally to go up and down the island, unloading, loading, and that the cooler tent was probably more doable for me. I haven't set up a large tent before. I've only set up what we have, and
It's up to you. So it's something you're really not interested in.
If we screen printed the tent we have, top.
I would love to use a town tent and have the town set it up for me at Newton Park and various places to kind of give me a little bit of a break. I love doing it. It would be nice. I think it's beneficial to our town. I have received emails from community and tourists that have really benefited and enjoyed the pop-up. So I don't think it's out of my realm to ask the town to, a couple times a month, 4 or 5 times a month, to set up the town's tent. I would do the tables and I would do everything else. I'm putting a lot of work in, and I don't think it's unfair to ask the town. That's just me. But.
And one of the problems really is kind of jurisdictional, if you will. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't, just like you, I can't direct staff to do anything.
Right.
Town manager, it gets a little bit.
I can ask town council to, if discussion about it.
One thing is, I know you go to specific events, right? But you also go to the regular places, right? You go to go to Times Square pretty regularly. You go to Newton Park fairly regularly. But specifically, once we get Times Square done, there's going to be a stage thing down at Park. So
You don't have to learn how to dance too, is that what you're saying? I don't understand.
Dance lessons, put that in there, dance lessons.
Who's playing the banjo?
You don't need a tent if you've got a stage with a cover.
Right.
Oh, I see what
Oh,
you're
yeah,
saying.
I saw, yeah.
And I don't know if maybe there's something we can do at Newton Park and make,
No, you need a banner to hang off.
maybe, because Newton Park has the little picnic table things too. Maybe it's not that necessary.
That's true, yeah.
You still might need, if you want to, if you're doing the shrimp festival, or you're going to some, event, you need it. But if you only need it 20% of the time, then it becomes much important.
I'd recommend putting on the budget the bags that we gave out before. Not, just put it in the budget so we don't have to get sponsors.
Did that one year, but I think based on the print quantity, I mean, it cost us the entire 10 grand. About 10,000.
Yeah, but we can order whatever quantity we can afford. It's kind of like, well, the other thing is what do we want to do with vegetation? We're going to offer to take people's invasives out, right? Wasn't that one of the plans?
One of them, yeah.
That's going to be pricey.
No, we're going to take them out because that'll eat up the budget in a hurry. But we're going to replace them with modest trees, kind of like the ones we were giving away at the birthday thing. Which were really nice.
Nicer than modest. Those were nice trees.
Those are nice trees.
Yeah, those are awesome trees. I heard already.
I'm not sure if that'll happen this budget cycle, or maybe that's something for the next one, because
Again, I'm of the opinion that I would hate to remove one before they're allowed to put it back in the ground.
And-
You know where I stand on that.
And if you're giving trees away
Just
anyway,
moving along, yeah.
they can get it for free anyway, so. And you get a free tree and you take yours out is another.
Hmm?
Which maybe there's not much of a benefit to them, but
Well, we can certainly allocate some towards something like that, right? Yeah. So the pamphlet, you think, is what do you think that, I guess a lot of it depends on what the print quantity is gonna be, but the development of it is
it's something, 'cause you know the benches we have,
$3,000, is that a good number?
one of the benches we have the bird and the turtle information on.
Yeah, Claire's wife did those, right, you said?
Yeah, I went to Mrs. Worthington, but she basically, I just said, well, can we use your graphics and throw them on there? She goes, she doesn't want to use her graphics on anything that she doesn't have a hand in. She's a source, I think, in the Mount House, so they have their graphics people too.
Graphic designers at the Mount House?
Yeah, well, they do things like the interpretive signs are in the Mount House and the ones in Newton Park, the native plant.
So those are those are town employees?
No.
Oh, you're saying they have the
people they work with.
relationship, yeah,
Right.
yeah, Allison has that relationship, yeah.
I've been working with graphic designers for a new program at Pink Show. We're gonna have all kinds of big signs that were a wingspan sign. I could give you their information too, just if you're pricing around.
Well, that's my next question.
3K.
Who's gonna be responsible for looking into pricing and?
I think the way it usually works is, we can look into, I can even make some calls to get an idea of pricing. When it actually comes to doing it, to selecting somebody, that happens within the staff's procurement processes.
Be helpful, just kind of like what we did with the pop-up tent. What I want, here's where it's at. Plus,
Okay, so since we're actually somewhat within our time limit on this one here, we got here like 3K for a pamphlet, roughly.
What was the buckets that you were referring to?
Well, again, I mean, I would say outreach, so a
Items,
pamphlet would
you
be
meant
outreach. Oh, not actually physical buckets,
Items.
but,
Oh, items.
it's
Oh,
a phrase,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, so if you decided
But we put
against
the
it.
dollars.
I was thinking real buckets too. I was-
No, what bozo buckets, I mean,
Everybody seems to know about
let's
these buckets.
identify headings that we could put them under, and
Like
outreach
trash
is a
then.
huge one,
thought it
but
was
is there something
trash.
physical, like Doc here said, the bag, that's not
Bags.
necessarily outreach, that's
I mean, that saves plastic and gets your
Sure.
name out.
absolutely, no, there's no question about that, so,
Budget, I know we're talking about the Shrimp Fest in a minute, but we're doing a float, still trying to. Is that something we talk about a little bit now, or just Shrimp Fest?
Under Shrimp Fest, we'll discuss.
It's
it.
budget too,
I
though.
would say under Shrimp Fest,
Okay.
actually, would be the best place for it, yeah, and then obviously this nothing's finalized here at all, as a
You
matter of
wrote it
fact, we
down.
won't,
I typed.
yeah. So, in review, like I said, so, I don't know, maybe there's 3K under the pamphlet, there's, still some idea, I mean, outreach would be a pop-up. So the cover, I mean, those ideas you had outside of the pamphlet, that's different for
So the
sub-bucket.
pamphlet is more maybe for
But just
adults.
day in and day out for the
us.
pop-up would be
Right.
another 1,000, another,
Are we talking about the coloring or the?
I'm actually
Just the
talking
general
about
items.
Beach
just
for everyone.
supplies.
Oh, supplies.
So the same sort of things that you spent the foundation dollars on, where you have boards, you have
I'd say-
containers, you have,
Right, I'd say for the year, what happens if we don't use up
lose
budget?
it,
You lose it.
you lose it.
Okay. So right now we have 3,000 for pamphlets.
Dynamic, I mean, it's,
If
something's
we decide to
under-
go with the reusable bags, it'd probably say 5,000.
That's what I put on down, actually.
You did?
Yeah,
Okay, so
just-
5,000 plus, so we have 8, 9, 10, so we'll go ahead and give the pop-up an additional 2,000.
And adjust accordingly. So those are the three big buckets, I guess, is what I'm looking at. And then we can, at maybe the next meeting, we can find it. Sound good?
Yes.
Excellent. 25, I'm tracking myself here. Good. All right, dark skies. We've got 15 minutes for that. I think the
You
to-do,
You like broken it up into times? Do you have a certain amount of time for each agenda item?
Yes, each subject, there's a agenda item, we have a time on it to try to.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's our first try at it, and like I said, I'm pretty flexible because the last 4 items are to be done in 20 minutes, so. But it's a process. For dark skies, we reviewed that. We had the steering document last meeting, and we did have some to-dos following that. A couple of them were reaching out to some of the applicants to find out what their experiences were, and Wendy and
That would be me,
Mary Rose, both of you two were.
right. So I did. I contacted a number of places. Let me see, looking at the wrong page here. This page. Beverly Shores, Indiana, Big Park, Village of Oak Creek, Arizona, Borrego Springs, California, Cottonwood, Arizona, Redstone, Colorado, Dripping Springs, Texas, and I don't know, Flagstaff, Arizona. And everybody was very helpful with degrees, and I'm still corresponding with several of them. But the most helpful, and I have detailed letters from them if anybody wants them. I'd be willing to share them, but I think I can tell you the most valuable, I think, is this one from, where are we here? Big Park, Arizona. This gentleman by Mr. Ryan. And I'd like to read to you what he said to me. It would be important to establish your foundation, your rules and your regulations that make dark sky a reality. Establishing a base for discussions, awareness, and eventually rules for the community to follow. Draft it out, meet with the business groups, the homeowner associations, and the regulating authorities. Of course, we're doing all of that. And the lighting providers, especially, to see what can be implemented. Set goals. Awareness, a year for awareness. Legislation, 2 years. Dealing with people who are grandfathered in and won't be compliant, to 10 years. Phase 1, collect friendly folks to be part of your organization. All success will be dependent upon promoting good neighbor policies. Can't tell people to do things, but you can ask. In other words, and I think the important thing is here, this is going to be a very long-term commitment if we decide to do it. And so it's going to take us a year just to set it up. And then, depending upon how that goes, continue or decide it's not doable. Everyone that I contacted, and I think most of these communities are very small. Flagstaff was a larger one. And that's why I was pleased to get this from this gentleman. But he did say that it is a long-term project. And that's something that I think is very sobering. And we need to think about it seriously. But I am still in communication with all of these people. Every one of them has been very, very cooperative. If we have specific questions to ask them, I will.
What was their overall impression of the experience? I guess it was worth it.
Yes, everyone said it's wonderful, and most of them said that they were probably halfway there when they started, and that's why it was easy.
Right.
Whereas
exactly.
we're going to have people who are grandfathered in and may not be willing to comply, and we're going to have to try and cajole them.
Well, normally there's a grandfathering period, and that's why he, I think, suggested that longer period. I mean, I went through, personally, I went through and read a bunch of the applications. That's in what goes into an application. I can say, I mean, 9 pages, 200 pages. Sorry to cut you off. Was there anything else you had?
No, and in my initial letter to each of these, I explained to them that we are in the initial stage of the dark sky commitment. We have an okay from our town council, and so we would appreciate any advice. And so they're all being very general, but they've all said if you have specific questions, don't hesitate.
So the other to-do was for me to actually, I agreed to actually sort of start the application process and start. However, I did not do that. And the reason being is, I had reviewed a bunch of applications at length, and some of those actually included their initial correspondence, which is that initial reaching out and saying, we're interested. And almost without exception, they all came back, the IDA came back was, before you even, they sort of coach you before you even get ready to put your application in, or they review, they have a discussion with you and say, okay, you should do this, or whatever it might be. But most of them, recommended immediately, reach out to local officials, businesses, homeowner associations, condo owners, et cetera. But you have to show the broad community support for the idea of controlling the growth of light pollution and the commitment, to good outdoor lighting. And so part of the application, like I said, they're quite lengthy, but typically you have to have your lighting ordinance in place to have that new, or whatever your lighting ordinance is, codified already and sort of ready to go. So let's say that's 25 of the pages right there, right? I mean, that's why this thing builds up in length. Also the support letters. So most of them come from elected officials, businesses, the mayor, the town council. And so you have all these support letters that go reach forward. You have to show outreach activities ready for the application. So that would be advisories coming from our PIO, our favorite PIO, Jenny Dexter, astronomy, gathers and parks, communications to the public about what's happening with our dark skies and our approach to achieving it, including coverage from local media, things like that. So they want it to be a big event, I think. Well, the reason I didn't actually is we've got, I think right now I don't think we have that support, certainly from the community and specifically our town. Because tomorrow there will be a new with the projects going on. I don't think, we're at risk of those being clearly outside of IDA requirements. So if that in fact goes through, then how? Because also as part of the application process, they also want to see permits that have been approved, showing that this enforcement and that you have a robust permitting process to help enforce this. I would clearly say that's not the case currently. Maybe it will be after tomorrow. We don't know, but I think that has a lot to go. If you've seen the plans for Bayside Park, going with Musco lighting, which is absolutely by far the best field lighting you can have for dark skies and for proper, responsible field lighting. So I'm really excited about that. But on the other hand, it's possible that we're just gonna, we don't know what'll happen tomorrow. But so I won't even speculate. But again, until we see that commitment, I'm certainly not going to submit any to this end, because the process is about. They say it's about 3 years from the point of application. So to Mary Rose's point, that means you have the support letters, you have already created some outreach, which again, I don't think is insurmountable by any stretch of the imagination. But what worries me is a lot of these applications, the town is part and parcel to this application. Unanimous votes, the whole, there's got to be high support for it, because that's really what they're looking for. Because without that, the enforcement, the permitting process doesn't uphold the compliance standards and things like that. So that's why I didn't submit the at this point. But I'm not saying that, this has been ongoing for a while, and I think this might be potentially one of the last hurdles. Because in the end, the real heavy lifting is from the public, the municipal aspect. The public has to set the example, meaning your town and its lawmakers, that this is what they want to do by lighting everything that's public, following these conventions, and then obviously bring along the entire community into it. So that's what I took away from my research this time through. So. Again, I don't think it's insurmountable. I just think maybe we're a month, maybe next month we'll have more news for it. But, is that?
Yes,
Any
that makes
comments
sense.
on that?
Yes. Makes a lot of sense.
justifiable, but again, I think I did go through, like I said, and study it a bit. You know, I sent all you the links. Did you guys have any impressions, anything to share with the board here on what your findings were as you
That
toured
was
around
my
the
one
website?
comment, broad community support, question mark, exclamation point.
That was mine as well.
It's throughout everything, all their materials include that, so I don't think that's impossible. I mean, what the residents feel versus maybe currently what, you know, our public, officials are, or staff maybe are doing are two different things, so. And, you know, getting that residential support could certainly help, change behavior too, so.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of public support. Well, it might just be the company I keep, but I think there is a lot of public support, and I'm certainly in favor of going ahead with this project, but not right now. I think we need to wait.
Yeah, I mean, because we have, I mean, fundamentally, our municipal planning ordinance is really pretty tight. As a matter of fact, it's a little bit tighter than some of the ones I read in the applications. And part of it, I think, is because it's the ones that are in applications are more comprehensive. We've got a 4-page municipal lighting ordinance, and it's actually based on dark skies principles, all of it. Problem is, it's not comprehensive, so there's areas that aren't covered, and there's you know, a lot of it has zoning where you have illumination goals for whether it's a residence, you know, L1 through L5 or whatever it might be, and which basically means it's increasing in light. So from dark areas and to cul-de-sacs to thick areas. So it makes sense.
Have there been any thought into getting a petition together?
I was thinking
Yeah,
of
I thought the
sending
same.
out a survey to home, I mean, since how much of the island, the owners don't live on the island. They rent it out. So we don't care what the renters are gonna say. We only care about owners or permanent residents.
Technically, taxpayers should probably have a say, or landowners.
That's what I'm
Whether
saying.
they're full-time or not, you're saying, or?
Yeah, the owners and full-time renters, not, you know, we don't care about the tourists. I mean, we do, but
course.
they shouldn't have,
Right.
because they're not gonna change the light bulbs.
Okay.
No, I mean,
Okay.
I think one of the maybe exceptions to that is that people associate bright white lights with safety. And if, you know, in areas, like you said, they have different L areas, areas where there's a lot of vacation renters.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, you know, we get a lot of us, you get people who buy a place, and there's just a case now where someone goes and takes out all the vegetation, they put down rock, put lights, because they want it low maintenance, and all they care about is that bottom line. So I think that, you know, we'll get pushback probably from people who are just, it's new to them, it's different.
Right, I mean, it's
an economic equation.
It's education, because it's got, you know, anything actually, I mean, there's, you know, I could fill a year with you know, illuminating engineer society standards and everything else, but we actually already have in our municipal ordinance luminance guidelines, so we have that chart literally already, but it's a little rougher than what you see now, that's more current.
But, you know, part of it too, to me, is like, we already have an ordinance, you know, and there's one thing that some on town council are very strong at promoting, is trying to keep view corridors to the beach. Means they want houses that are on the beach to not have the downstairs finished, so people can drive along the stairwell and see the beach. But it also means that the beach can see a stairwell.
Mm-hmm.
And the more, you know, it's one of those kind of really oxymoronic kind of thing where the people that build these giant houses that no one like, well, they really do protect the beach from light.
I mean, Bonita Beach has got a pretty dark beach, because they got that wall of
Got a-
you
that
know,
wall of light.
monster
But
houses.
what it means is, if, you know, that means it really got to be island wide. So the dark skies are almost like you have to be anyway.
Mhm.
Turtle complaint, because you can see right down those streets.
I mean, there's a lot of people, I mean, if you look at, I wouldn't say it's necessarily enormously overlit right now. I mean, the beach, I mean, there's obviously lighting issues, but,
Well, that depends on what season you're in.
sure. But also, I mean, I think the other point is that right now, based on, I mean, again, nobody even realized that ordinance existed until we brought it up to council. I mean, certainly none of the council people did. You know, Rick was like, oh man, she said I would just go to Lowe's and buy a fixture and throw it up, you know? I mean, So there's been zero enforcement over the last, who knows how long. I mean, I've never heard Hyde nor heard of it since the 10 years I've been here, but that's, you
But I
know.
also think, things are changing.
Last 2 years, there's been.
Resorts are getting in touch with the Sea Turtle Conservancy, trying to get educated and understand that there's grants for them, that really all they want to change out the retrofits, all they have to do is supply the bulbs. And, hopefully with our new, Estero Boulevard lighting, I think the more we change, it's almost like lead by example. More people will see resorts using the correct lighting, and Estero Boulevard and Bayside Park and Times Square, that will just lead by example that we are in a wildlife, sensitive area. And I think that will be the beginning of the train.
What we need to know is the township overall, town council, as well as all the members willing to sacrifice, basically to be part of Dark Skies is you have to sacrifice.
We'd have to talk to them. I mean, we went September 9th, I went in front of the council and we asked them, steering advice, shall we pursue, modifications, modernization of the vegetation ordinance? And also, dark skies, investigate dark skies certification. And it was a consensus was go, 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 go as fast as you can.
Can we send a survey in the water bill? Water bills are sent to the owners?
I'll tell you one thing you can do is, or you can write letters to the editor. You can contact the Observer, see if Nathan wants to write a story, or whether they'll publish an editorial, say, from the chair, about the value of dark sky, well-written letter. Start to create the buzz, because I don't know if anybody outside this room is talking about it. Like,
Sure. But I mean,
Pop-up could also.
a lot of it, like I said, is the education. I mean, like you said, Bill, they think it's whiter's safer, but the whole point in dark skies is to get rid of the glare. I mean, unshielded lights, cut-off lights don't produce glare, and glare is what is unsafe.
and it's also creating an attitude, because you go downtown and like we talked about it, they put the amber street lights over the new intersection, but there's two businesses there that are shockingly, a lot of light trespass coming out of the buildings. You can't even notice the color of the lights because there's so much coming out of those buildings.
That's nuisance lighting is what that's called.
So,
yeah.
Creating I'm sure that the business owners think that the brighter I am, the more I'll attract people in, like the restaurant owner thinks the louder the band is, the more I'll attract people into my business. When if everything is dark, if everything is warm lights, lower level, it creates a more intimate atmosphere for everybody on and it's just a different thing. And it's convincing people that's good for business. It's more inviting, it's more pedestrian-ish, pedestrian-friendly to people who, more street level friendly.
So the town, if I may have a question, from Beach, is if you have a town ordinance and understand that the council can't direct staff, but town council can direct the town manager to direct staff to start following these lighting ordinances.
We are actually, one of the last things I asked for is a talk about it, or not, but about our enforcement strategy particularly with short-term rentals. Because enforcement costs money. So it's an effort. You already know that Chad does a lot of lighting enforcement, but it's pretty much exclusive of your turtles, I think, right?
I mean, that's what's driven it.
Yeah. So, we certainly can, there's part of the argument is, are we complaint driven with enforcement, or do we actually go out and are proactive about enforcement? Those are conversations we do have. And if there's a consensus in council for the town manager to take a certain action, and particularly if it takes funding, and in effect.
Okay, so, said all that, we'll see how things go, move along with the municipal projects here, and able this to find out how that all goes.
Well, before you get off of it, if that's something Murph wants to advise, to say that if we're talking about enforcement at the town council, that we recommend that we start enforcing the biggest violators of light trespass. Put that in the mix if there's consensus. To try to doing it for other.
I would agree with that.
You have to first buy light meters. I don't know if the town has those.
Oh, yeah.
Chad, would
You
you
do?
like to comment on that? He's got,
Well, yeah, I got a spectrometer that we got budgeted in the last cycle, so that's coming. It's more wavelength rather than a meter. There is a meter, that's on my desk, and I'm learning how to use it. But you know, light metering, the code asks for it, I believe, is from a professional that's giving photometrics at the end of the project. Verify ground truth the photometrics that they supplied at the beginning of the project, if that makes sense. That's how the lighting ordinance reads, but you don't need a light meter to see if a light is full cutoff, fully shielded.
exactly, I would say the
etc.
majority of the enforcement would be to say you can't have a, halogen spotlight pointed out to the street, hit your
Now-
neighbor. I mean,
So I kind of assumed, I guess it'd work like the sound ordinance, where you stand so far apart with your light meter, you're so far away with your light meter, and you get a reading, if it's over a certain amount, then highlighting it.
total
Again,
luminance,
the way I
yeah.
read the ordinance, the compliance part of the photometrics, which is talking about we're metering what, the foot candles or whatever, different areas on a property or at the property line, et cetera. We do that, yes. I'm not going to pretend to be technically proficient in such like metering, but have a project coming in, typical DO or LDO, or we're changing out lights. Here's our photometrics. We propose, staff says, okay, that looks great. You're meeting you're below the maximum averages, et cetera. Once the project is done, and then that's where the code requires it's almost like an as-built, but for light.
Well, it means that people are essentially grandfathered, that if they're not doing anything new,
There's no grandfathering. It means that you have a professional engineer, their stamp on this is what's been built in terms of photometrics.
if there's something that's been around for 20 years, it obviously violates all kinds of trespass.
The code says that everything must have come to compliance at a certain date, and that date's well past.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, it's right now. I mean, it's supposed to be, it was 10 years ago, it was supposed to be live. That was the end of the grandfathering date was 2010, I think, or something like that. There's also, I mean, there's easy things. There's mounting heights. Biggest thing though is if you can actually see the source. You can see the source and there's light spillage. So the source of the bulb. So as long as it's, you've got downward, I mean, that's the grand majority of it, is to have it avoiding light spill to the sky. So everything just needs to be pointed down, and there's zero safety issues with that because you remove all the glare, you can see better.
Right, but a couple of examples I'm thinking about, it's like, I don't know, to tell somebody like maybe they have to, shield the lights on the inside, but then it's still on a second floor, so down on the low level, you're still getting seeing the source. But just an actual measurement to me is appealing. It says you can do that, maybe or something.
Oh, you can do it, yeah. I saw the consultant use it. It's the reading, I think. I believe, so.
A lot of problems will just be solved by technically cut off shield.
Right, and it's, I mean, our current ordinance just basically says that, and then
That's in the lighting code. That's not coming from the Sea Turtle.
That's in our municipal lighting ordinance, yeah. I mean, you can have a naked bulb, but it's gotta be, 20 lumen limits, to what, if you can see the source or whatever it might be. And then also landscape lighting, if you do have some, there's limits typically that.
That includes internal lights that are shining through.
No, it doesn't address any of that. Anything about interior lights, although I think past some of that in some of these IDA.
You're saying our current code,
Our current code doesn't say anything about interior lights, no. Municipal lighting ordinance, yeah.
nothing just generally about light trespass, no matter where the light source is.
Oh, yeah, no, you are not allowed to produce up to a half a foot candle, I believe, over the property line. As you can see, I mean, If you want to see a great photometric plan, look at that Bayside Park plan. I mean, it shows you exactly what the foot candles will be in the perimeter of the entire park, or the entire property, perimeter of the ball field. I mean, it's nail it. Nail it, yeah. Really impressive. I mean, from a permitting standpoint, you can look at that and say, okay, it looks great, Going 0-foot candles along the entire property line, or maybe there's like a 10th or something on the east side of Bay Oaks, but good with that?
What do we need? We have town councils.
No, they suggested encouragement to move forward and continue to investigate it and close it, so.
I say we should get a survey the owners, the people who are responsible for the lights, and see if we get buy-in or not.
My issue, again, is to me, there's a very pivotal point in tomorrow's meeting to find out how the town chooses to move forward with the municipal parks at Times Square, Bayside Park, and Old San Carlos Boulevard. Whether or not there's commitment, or that's something that you'd have to attempt to overcome, or, whether that deflates the balloon, really.
What are they doing tomorrow?
I was gonna use the members' reports, but there's a lighting plan. I don't know if it's new, but the consultant is gonna come and present at the M&P meeting in Chambers here tomorrow. I don't know what time even. So what time's your meeting, Bill?
9. And they're going to give us, I think,
Presentation.
the next level of the design, just lighting, but I think.
Okay. Well, the entire plan, okay.
What is the lighting gonna be?
I don't know if it's,
Yeah, ask us tomorrow.
if it's the same. They have, I mean, the luminance levels, let's say for Bayside Park, are I think 6 times what's allowed in our municipal code. I won't go through it all now. I can't show all my cards, but anyway. But yeah, I went and spoke as a resident. And I just said it doesn't comply whatsoever with our municipal code. There's uplighting, the uplighting had the lumen levels, or the lumen outputs were 2 times higher than they were allowed to be. They're allowed to be under 900 lumens, and these were basically 2,000, things like that. I mean, anything uplit has to have an opaque cap on it, and there's no opaque caps on the wells, things like that.
And some things like, I know uplights are only supposed to be used, all the light is falling on what the target is. Can't do that with trees.
Also need to be shielded though, too.
Oh, they're
The two,
uplighting.
if you're pointing at a sign, your shield is such that all the light is going to the sign, none of it is escaping past the sign.
Well, to give you an idea, no, you can't uplight signs, period. You have downlight. In our municipal lighting ordinance, any sign has to be downlit. Go take a run through town and see. None of them can be backlit, so the lights inside that shine through the light don't meet the municipal lighting ordinance either. So it's those types of things. Not to say they're not insurmountable, plus there was not a focus on it. Let's face it. I mean, I'm not, pointing fingers. I'm just saying that hasn't been a priority for the town, so they didn't enforce it. So anyway, I think we're over on that. 454. Dark Skies is over for this month. I mean, if you guys are good with it.
No,
I know. You can make a motion.
I think I'd make a motion the township be compliant with their own ordinance.
I think we actually made that motion.
I think we have.
we brought that. I think we brought that to
I
town.
mean, that's a basic. How can we have our own township violating our own ordinances?
I went based on a motion
Right,
from
we
last
did.
meeting, and we did prepare a motion that I communicated. That's actually been done, so.
But again,
Well, Bill, what type of motion were you, or I don't know if you're in a motion, but what kind of thing do we need to say so it shows that Murph is behind? You're trying to say something. maybe.
No, you'd make a motion to.
The town
to-
comply
that
with its
Murph
lighting
requests
ordinances.
that you enforce, actually, well, not only comply, but also,
Comply and enforce.
Really should advise the town council, direct the town manager,
That's what it was, yeah.
direct the town staff what it is to follow our own. That's how it goes, I believe.
And if you want to reinforce what I'm planning on saying, I had too much, but I think the town should not only follow the letter of the rules, but the intent.
Of course, exactly.
So, I mean, and I mentioned this once before, I mean, there should be, projects should be the shining example of how we want everybody to do their projects.
Correct, exactly, be the example. Do not attempt to pervert the ordinance
Not,
to your satisfaction.
not the shining city on the hill. Dude,
Dim City.
What can we
Okay,
do
so
to
we
support you?
All right, so
in
what's the
that?
verbiage we need?
but right now you've got a motion. I think you've made a motion, so you can
Okay.
either withdraw your motion and
I
start
can
again.
withdraw it.
Okay,
We need to reword it, Steve.
I think we need, I mean, if there's a big meeting tomorrow about lighting, we need to get something simple, get that done. You know, getting the rest of the township in compliance, I think that's going to be a bigger issue.
I don't have a copy of the last of our last motion to the council, not that we couldn't make another one.
I think we just simple, direct, tomorrow's meeting.
And I think it gets
Well,
to
we
the
can't
heart.
do it at the meeting, it's an.
No,
it's
but
an
we're going to do it
M&P meeting.
tonight as support for tomorrow's meeting.
Well, we can't, it's actually an M&P meeting, so there's no public comment. Management plan.
We're not public.
But
But there's no there's no advisory.
I'm just, what can we do to
The next
support you,
time
Bill?
you could do that would be the next town council meeting.
But Steve, if you make a motion today, I'll have that in my pocket for tomorrow.
Is what he
Okay.
said,
Okay.
is what he said enough, like, is
Well,
that enough?
I
for
would,
you?
you know, I'd say, I'd go, if you want to go a little further, I would say that, you know, like I said, it's an example of how projects should be. And that that it should follow not only the letter, but the intent. Ordinances.
Can we add in that verbiage and then
Yes.
I will second?
I agree to that amendment.
I'm gonna
Well,
need
you should
to- I'm
probably
gonna need to hear
state
it
it,
all.
I'm not a part of the committee, I'm not a
Oh.
I'm gonna
voting
need to
member.
hear it all. We're
would-
very official here
Sorry, sorry.
in this board.
All right, I make a motion that the beginning part's the same. But they should adhere to the ordinance as written and set an example to follow the letter of the law. It's
Of what
ordinance.
Of the lighting municipal. Okay, yeah, I heard him say municipal lighting ordinance. Okay, we have a second?
Second.
A discussion? Position? Oh, okay, motion carries unanimously.
That was Dr. Fossum,
Motion seconded by,
Member Howell, second.
Member Howell, correct. Okay, now I'll. Shall we move on? We'll move on. That was a little over time, but that's okay. So MRF meeting schedule was added by our esteemed liaison, staff liaison, Chad Schutz. Chad, can you?
Yeah, I just wanted to see if there's any mornings where everybody's available, so we don't have these meetings.
By lunch?
Huh?
In the budget, the lunch?
Round bag it. I'm open, I'm complete, I mean,
And usually with these things, it takes staff to figure out what windows are open, because the room's got to be available,
Right.
staff's got to be available.
the question is who's open to change for a morning, not knowing what morning it is yet.
Would staff be able, or would you be able to give us like 3 different options or a few different
Well,
options?
I'd rather it come the other way. I'm asking if y'all can give me some options as to when everybody's available.
Okay, let's start with,
Or with Monday, we can start with Tuesday, if you can just raise your hand.
Don't do anything on weekends, correct? He's trying to get rid of. Monday, I volunteer at Manatee Park this time of year, and I'm full-time employee Tuesday through Saturday, so I'm on the island at 5, and I'm here until 3, 4 o'clock most days. It's my early day to come here, so I personally can't really make that change unless it's a Monday, and then not just volunteer. It is important to me. The whole reason I moved to Florida was to be with the manatees, and it's my only real day that I can be there with them educating. That would be my only hangup.
Shall we go on?
Yeah, I can make myself available any morning.
Yeah, Tuesdays wouldn't be good for
Whenever.
me, but
For my schedule, I work all day or I don't work all day, and it's variable at what days. So morning or afternoon makes no
technically you
difference.
could schedule around it if you,
Technically, but
which would apply now too, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the whole day, either be here in the morning or the afternoon. On my
Could we
work
have
schedule.
earlier meetings? Like, is this room open earlier on Wednesdays?
I bet until 9, so I don't know, I'm just joking.
I didn't mean to.
Or if you
Let's
promise to
continue
stop
on.
at 5.
Jennifer, what's your,
Okay, for me, I work from home. I can certainly work around. However, there's I'm turtle time, and there are times where I'm out there much later than, and if that was I'm leave Mondays and Thursdays. But again, if it's something happening where we need to take, then my mornings are a little bit later on the beach, which would be like 9, 10 o'clock.
But your pop-up date, isn't that Wednesday? We'll eliminate Wednesday?
So Tuesdays at Newton, but I can always change the days
Okay.
with the pop-up. That's,
Can you just like an hour earlier?
As I said, the caveat to that would be we actually end it at maybe 4. Not just to make it earlier to have a 4-hour meeting, 3-hour meeting.
It seems like we average ending at 6 when we start at 3. So if we started at 2, we'd theoretically be done.
yeah, I mean, the
by 5.
request is because our meetings run long.
That would
If
be
we
good
actually
for me.
left
I like
at staff closing time, life would be good, I think, is the problem, is part of the problem, but
She doesn't mind staying
we can
late.
manage the agenda better too. I mean, let's face it, we have so much to talk about, and, you know, we're also trying to change and do more discovery on our own instead of sitting here and hash through and learn about subjects during meeting time, so. We got through
Motion
that
to go
meeting
for
the other
2
day
o'clock.
pretty quick, although it was a stress on me when we had to leave at 4:30 when Chad was here.
time and does the town close? It's supposed to be 4:30? So even 2 o'clock when, we have been going for 3.5 hour meetings.
But we don't have, I mean, the point is, do we really need to go that long, or can we prepare better and,
Talk less.
well, what you'd say is, what you're suggesting, I
I
mean,
believe everyone
our
has,
pace would be reduced. I mean, we wouldn't have our output as much, is what you're saying. We wouldn't accomplish as much if we had to limit.
We try to.
See what you're
Let's-
saying, Jennifer.
Change the meeting time to 2.
Let's try it, see how it goes. That's an adjustment I can make.
They fixed 4:30 quitting. We did.
Well, I mean,
The
we do.
other day?
Eva
I mean, that seemed to
Eva
make
says
the
yes,
end
and we do what
occur.
Eva wants, so.
4:30 wrap up, 5 o'clock done.
I mean, from 2 to 4:30, that's 2.5 hours. It's a pretty good meeting.
It is.
I mean, I don't sit through,
Yeah, we
I
can
would
do
never
that.
sit through business meetings that long, man.
We can
Actually,
do that.
what I might do is suggest what I tried once in my career, and that is that you're not allowed to sit at the meeting. Want to see how quick meetings go when you're not allowed to sit? When you're not allowed to sit? I mean, it's extremely effective now. It
I would
wasn't,
prefer that. I would prefer to stand.
I'm just saying, I mean, things actually move along quite quickly. But anyway, I mean, so Chad, if, is the available an hour earlier? And if so, is that an initial step?
Yep,
Right
I'll check.
direction? Okay.
You know, Chad, if you start at 9, it enables them to have 8-hour.
We'll have an
meetings.
8-hour, I mean,
To have lunch going for me then.
Chad, you know, but also we have to understand Chad's got a life too, guys, so, you know, so theoretically, so he's in full man. So I think that's a good approach. Everybody agree?
Yes.
You good with that, Jennifer? Yeah, you guys are good?
I'll confirm. on the
Or I
next
had to be the
agenda.
difficult one on that.
You are what you are, that's what I like to
Working
say.
man.
Okay. 4:50, 5:05, we ran over by 2 minutes on that, so nice job. Shrimp Fest.
Yes.
Parade.
Are we in? Did we,
We are
pay our
in.
fee or whatever?
Yep.
Good.
Oh, did you send that check?
Thank you.
Nation.
We're in, we just,
Okay, so when we're, pop-up is, I mean, that's all, you're working on
All of you
staffing.
received the email,
Should we respond now with, I think you have my times already, right?
I actually
Cindy and I
have
gave
a
you-
sign-up sheet, I'm gonna pass it around, I really need all hands on board if you possibly can. Just so I'm not there the whole weekend as a MRF representative. I broke it down into shifts for MRF, members, and I think it'll be a lot of fun, and
Yeah, I mean,
hope
I'm in.
I
I
hope
can't remember what we talked about, so I'll have to text you on that,
I'll
but
go ahead and hand this down. This is just text your name if you could put the shift that you're available.
I
Okay.
am with another club the whole weekend.
Okay.
Sorry.
Move on. So what about, so the Tesla is out for the parade?
I am gonna be in the parade, either with the club or with here, depending on, that is, you know, it could be a club event, or I could use, you know, that parade, but there's other club activities. So the
No,
Tesla
I don't
could
know
be
who
in
that
the
is.
parade, either with the yacht club or Murph.
we don't know what you're
We don't
pulling
know
yet.
what we're pulling, I guess.
So let's,
That question, I guess.
Yeah, so
That's
did
the-
you guys get my email about what is needed to make the boat pretty enough for a parade?
yes. Did you forward that, Chad? You sent
Yeah,
it
I think you
actually to,
I sent it to you three in hopes that it would be forwarded.
can't forward, so
But anyway,
I can pass that around. I
the
actually
boat
printed
can
it
be
out.
ready. We need a flatbed trailer, something to pull it. It changes around my schedule a little bit. Oh, I got one thing. It changes around my schedule a little bit about how I was gonna be building it. But really that would then just come into like, if we were gonna do a float anyway, would there be a budget for it? And would we be able to just put that budget into this? And that way it would be used. But I also don't want it to, you know, because it's a personal boat, I want it to, you know, whatever that would be. But the budget would,
Cool idea to use your boat, but I mean, we're on a time here where
no, it can be, the time
Oh.
isn't an issue for me. That's not a problem.
what is it that needs to be done with the boat?
I did print it out.
So I need planking for a deck. We could just use plywood. That was Steve's idea, which planking that I was gonna use anyway, and the plywood are about the same price right now. We need a bed sheet and, then time for me to get it pretty.
But we would need something to haul it.
Right? Yeah, well, that's,
Yeah.
we have the source, it's a 30-foot heavy boat, so wood and oxy hull. Flat bottom, so flatbed
Flatbed
would be
trailer would
best,
be
but how
best.
long, I mean, I'm not a trailer expert, I mean, you'd need a 30-foot trailer?
No, I mean,
20, I mean, you can only cantilever back so far, right?
how much does the boat weigh?
It's around 2,000,
2,000.
Oh,
about a ton.
well,
Makes a big difference, because you
that
could
heavy.
strap it down. You wouldn't need a 30-foot trailer, I mean.
It's
boat
flat
trailer.
bottom,
Oh, I thought
so
that-
like one or two straps just to keep it from shifting, really. But a flatbed trailer and a 4x4 truck, I think, would be plenty for it.
How wide is it?
That's something we can change. So when it's all done, it's supposed to be 10 feet with the AMA or the outrigger. The AMA is detachable, so for our purposes, we could just put a plank of like a bamboo or a log or something to make it look like that. It doesn't need to be what I want it to be eventually. It just needs to look like a boat or a Polynesian boat or whatever we're going for.
It's a monohull with an outrigger.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And the monohull is built and the outrigger is built, but just the connecting has to be
Connecting-
sized differently to get it on a trailer.
Right.
96 inches is the limit for a trailer for width. Or you can get a permit, but I don't think we want to get a
The
permit.
way I made it, it detaches, and then you can put them in the poles you can put in between, so it can be wider or thinner or however.
Just for you to keep in mind, 96 inches. I mean, you're not going to be trailering it and the state police aren't going to pull you over.
Right.
But that is the legal limit, is 96. Without a permit.
I have a bamboo mast, I have a bamboo boom, I set a king-size bed sheet for a sail.
How tall is your mast? How tall will it be off the ground? And do we have any restrictions on the parade route?
I'm keeping it low enough so it shouldn't be any higher than a regular semi.
It'll also depend on the bed, on the,
Bed of the truck also, yeah.
They have the,
I'm figuring the bed to be 3 to 4 feet off the road.
Some of it has to do with how finished, quote unquote, finished you want it to be too, right? I mean,
Well, that, I actually started work on that. It's gonna look pretty by this weekend. Aside from the deck, because that's the only thing where I haven't purchased those planks or the plywood yet, but the boat will be pretty by this weekend. I have a forklift to put it on a trailer. We just need the trailer in the hall.
I don't know if the township has a trailer. Saw that the pump out boat's on a trailer right out here now. Don't want to tow the pump out.
so I can give it to
Sorry.
Mary Rose. Yeah, no, that's fine, I just,
You want me to hand it to?
I was gonna, Mary Rose hasn't
sorry.
seen it.
Real quick, before I fill this out, what time is the parade? 'Cause I don't know if we
I
do.
could make it.
If we do that, no, I just mean, if we do that, I don't want to be committing to being at the pop-up at the same time the parade is.
yeah, we'll discuss
work it
that.
out,
So
okay.
basically, the parade, we have to be there, I believe, by 9 a.m. They shut down the bridge at 9 a.m. This man, and they block it off all the way, I believe, to school.
Okay.
And we need to be there, all of us, by unless
library or
one
whatever.
person from Murph, because then the market starts at 10. If one person from Murph doesn't care to be in the parade, they can be the booth. Or I can be at the booth, but if or for the booth, I don't believe it has to be a Murph member as long as it's from town.
Rate limiting thing sounds like a trailer. And you probably could get away with a 20-foot trailer with a 30-foot, 2,000 pound.
Right.
Does anybody have access to a trailer? I'm not sure about the
I don't.
implications of using.
I don't either, I mean, that's, to me, that is an issue, is sourcing a trailer.
I think there's too much to do to go through with this. We don't have a trailer. We don't have $500 to put into this right now either. I think we need an alternate plan.
I could move. This was if it was a budgeting thing that you guys wanted to also do, but I also see it as an investment because it's stuff I'm gonna be doing anyway. So I can just move some stuff around, and on all of the boat being ready side, money-wise and all that, I can handle it. Trailer, and so essentially it would be free for the city, for the town. You just need the trailer and the truck.
That's where you're at.
This was just because you guys were asking what it would take, so.
Right, and we have 5 weeks, technically, I think, right? 4?
Right.
5 weeks,
source
so
a
we have
trailer.
5 weeks to source a trailer.
We only have one other meeting. Of email.
Right, but that would be kind of work
Are
independently,
they
I
rentable?
suppose.
Can we just rent a trailer?
Some of the research, that's some of the stuff we can do is check it out and see where we can, I mean,
There
I
are
can
trailers.
ask
You could
around, I
just rent
got
the trailer?
I belong to a fishing club, these are a bunch of guys that
The
have all
city
kinds
of
of
Fort
stuff like
Myers
that.
uses huge flatbed trailers to move sod from inland and out, back and forth all the time. Could we reach out to the city, see if we could borrow one of their trailers? I mean, those sod trailers are
Ask
massive.
to the council, let's say,
I think like with the town, there might be liability issues.
Sure.
It's like you may have you want to use a town truck to pull the trailer. That
We have a lawyer draw up something that if we hurt ourselves or the boat, you're not liable.
Yeah,
Well, to give you a bad example, 2 years ago, somebody fell off the yacht club. They had a pontoon boat, tried to sue the owner of the pontoon boat. It was a yacht club member.
you can sue anybody, you know that, yeah.
I can also,
Present that, I see.
I can reach out to the
That you
guy
can
who
sue anybody?
lent me his trailer. He's a construction guy that we used in the previous. That was like a 16.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
but didn't it have like metal, wasn't it a sort of more of a box truck? Or not a box
yeah, I did
truck,
have like
but-
a 2-foot metal cage around the back, kind of flipped down.
Right,
That may not work for,
oh, exactly. Unless-
Purely a,
Yeah,
Sometimes those are detachable. I've had, I have a 4x8 trailer with a detachable.
maybe you check that, Bill. But
This
what
is
also, what length do you think recommendation would be for that?
I would say 20 would be comfortable. I mean, are you gonna put people on it, or just the boat?
People.
That's a whole,
You're gonna dress up like Maui with the tattoos and everything.
I ride a Harley, and I have not a single tattoo or piercing, so. Answer's no.
You're who keeping Harley afloat, actually. You're kind, no. So,
Sourcing the trailer is the rate limiting.
so do we have agreement that we will use the,
Find a trailer.
How about we set a
Find a
time
trailer.
limit? How about we set a time, if we can't find a trailer by this date, how long do we need to create another float or something else?
right?
You
Or
know,
we can also, if you don't mind looking into that, I think that trailer,
I don't think when I used last time would be approved. Things like you said, the things may come off, but this has been a working construction trailer for a while in Florida. So rust works like,
Yeah.
This person was drunk and fell off the trailer. It was nothing to do with the
yeah, I'm just
malfunction.
talking about,
2,000
With
pounds
the
isn't
trailer
that
to hold
heavy,
the boat.
right?
No,
Not at all. I mean, what's a lift is 5,000 pounds, right? 5 and 10. I mean, mine's
my
a 10.
lift is 10. I think
Right.
that's the minimum.
Right. And you can get 5s, but I mean, that certainly backs you in, but.
Yeah.
So the trailer would obviously, I
Any
mean, my
boat
boat's
trailer would work.
3,500 pounds, right? Now that would fit in a regular boat trailer, not necessarily, I mean, flatbeds are usually a lot more robust, I'd say.
just say flatbed for stability with people on it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I go,
They
because
do have a 20-foot, access to a 20-foot boat trailer, but I don't think that's it's really for a little light
Vehicle.
skiff, and I don't think with the, bunks aren't gonna
With
work.
people
You
on
want
it.
something, yeah, okay.
you put wheels on your boat.
So what's our drop dead date
figure a way.
on sourcing a trailer? In case
Well-
somebody's watching us out there in our viewership, if you have a
But we
trailer
need a
you can
trailer
loan us.
regardless. Trailer
Of
that could,
course, yeah.
we need a trailer, so if we can get, we need a trailer. If it can fit the boat, great. If it can't, we still need a trailer.
right, and
But
if
you
we
can-
don't have, we can't fit the, boat, we can always dress it up with some native trees and,
I mean, Plan B could be just to pull a boat.
Do I have
Right.
a boat on a trailer?
Well, I have access to that boat, and I have a boat, so if we had to, I suppose I could pull my boat and we just decorate.
Not his
you know.
boat, a boat that's already paired up with the trailer, you're saying.
Right,
Or, we can go,
exactly, somebody, yeah,
or if we're really not ready for the boat this year, we can go with I can try to get the old trailer and we can go back to the panels.
right, that actually is also Plan B too.
we really need to kind of,
Right.
and decide on, because
But we plan on that trailer and see if we could have 2 vehicles and 2 trailers.
But why don't we say the 23rd of,
it's
That's,
six,
that's
Of
in
the
the
month, that's
application.
2
What we
weeks.
have is in the
Yeah.
application.
and then from there, we would have 2.5 weeks to work on Plan B.
2.5 weeks,
Two.
Plan B, and
Well,
I'll reach out to my trailer person, because, we can we're not gonna vote, unless we're talking about money or something, we're not gonna vote on anything. So, we
Right.
we can talk outside this and get it done. And also, wasn't there talk about someone have a place to put this so we can decorate it up for the parade somewhere on the island?
What we usually
Yeah,
do
we'll
for the
find
yacht club
someplace.
is just pull it into Bay Oaks and decorate it there, because most of the stuff blows off. Anyhow, if you go any speed. But if you decorate it days before, then you have
Right.
to move it to Bay Oaks
unless we're
to
doing
get in the
some-
parade
right,
and everything.
right, and in your case, assemble it actually, sort of, so.
Really, what are we gonna be decorating with?
Bay
I wanna
Oaks.
use a lot of, what will we be decorating with?
I don't know,
What
make
would we use to decorate?
But I have somewhere, hopefully,
Eating some paint.
it's a bunch of
make
inflatable
twigs.
stuff, like inflatable sharks,
Plastics?
turtles.
Okay,
They're cute.
Yeah, that's not,
We're not leaving them behind. We're not letting them go in the ocean. They're not
Okay.
real dolphins.
The turtle will mate with your turtle.
okay. So then we're agreed, we're gonna
Do the best we can.
we go with Plan A, and then if not, we follow the Plan B.
By the 23rd, you said?
Something like that, all right? Perfecto. Excellent, excellent. All right.
Anybody want to come help anytime? You
I mean,
just
it's
let me know.
5:20, it's 5:20, we have exotic vegetation and manatee conservation, yeah, so,
I'm gonna talk as fast as an
okay,
auctioneer.
let's
No.
go, let's go.
The first thing is that I wanted to make the correction that I missed. In September, when we approved the minutes, we're going to say 161 properties on Fort Myers Beach had invasive plants identified on them. The Master Gardener volunteers, that should have been 761 properties on Fort Myers Beach were identified with invasive plants.
What's the denominator? How many total houses evaluated?
I don't think we,
As many as you could see from all the streets on Fort Myers Beach.
You
We
don't know
didn't
the
count
number of houses, so like, is it 10%, 20%,
Didn't
50?
count the number of properties on it.
Anybody know?
And some of them were inaccessible because they're in gated communities. So even with that, low estimate in my mind. And it was only by the street, it wasn't from the canals or going into people's yards, so. Things that needed to be addressed, if you got a chance to look at the steering document, we're making real progress here. And as of sometime in the past month, some of the information has been added to the Fort Myers Beach website. So we do have the handout from the University of Florida, IFAS, Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences has been added, as well as a PowerPoint with some information. I thought it might be ending up on the Environmental Science tab, but it's under Outreach, MRF. If you go to our website and look at the Marine Resource Task Force, there's an outreach section now, and it includes this vegetation information. The two things that I still are hoping to be added, and one is because people keep asking me, is a link for them to look at their property to see if they were identified as having invasive plants. 761 properties. People come up to me and ask. I mean, saw people walking around, they knew it was going on, a lot of communities and businesses participated by offering free parking for that events, it was 5 of them, and so now they want to know results. So that really needs to be added
that's
somewhere.
a key one. So we can try to.
That's probably the number one.
Right.
Thing that is left. And then the public awareness, possibly, and there's 2 ways to do that. One, we can actually add in the information from the city of Sanibel that they've kind of granted us permission for, which is listed there under number 4. Or we could just say, go to the natural resources site on the city of Sanibel's website and look at these sites. If space, it seemed like there might be some issue with the amount of space this was taking up. That's an option. And then everything else is going pretty well. I did want to make a motion to include flyers on native vegetation in the front entrance here. We had talked about that previously, like 2 months ago, and it was like, sure, do that. But it was like, I think we need a motion so that not anyone watching can say, oh, well, I'm going to bring in my literature. I would like it to be specific to the Native Plant Society and to the University of Florida's IFAS information.
A specific flyer?
This one's already on the website, but yes, to put in the front, and this from the Native, yes, I brought some, yes. Handed these out a couple minutes. But just information from those 2 groups to be put into the town hall's front information dispenser.
I probably, see if we have these available.
Those, I believe, are out front.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be
Native.
putting stuff out there and then having other people from wherever coming in and saying, well, these people put stuff out there, and what's the correct procedure to have that done?
I think you would probably not put them out there, but give them to staff and the staff.
Okay, fair enough. And then everything else has kind of been going on. Jennifer's been talking to different groups. I've gone out and talked to different groups. There's articles in the newspaper, which is the Beach Observer, up tents handing out information all the time. And we had the Vegetation Management Plan. I heard the town council is bringing that back towards us. I heard that indirectly. I have not seen that.
It's a little disconnect on my part because some, in town council meeting, they've been talking about the tree plan, and here we're calling it the vegetation management plan. It is the vegetation management plan. We've been discussing it.
Okay, because yeah, there's a vegetation thing on landscaping, and then there's the tree protection, and there's 2 sets of ordinances. I had asked last request was that they get closer together so people can find them. And then there's the money issue, which is kind of ongoing. I guess my request would be if anyone sees or hears about grants to apply for, to bring it to a meeting and we can go from there.
Okay, so on the actual vegetation management ordinance, is that, I guess it's ongoing, right? I mean, you're still discussing it, so it wouldn't make sense for Chad to start
Coming from
actually
council,
writing it.
boy, I'm kind of a blur and all this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's on my list of something to write and bring to Murph.
Right.
So the next step would be, Chad's the one that has to do the work and actually write it. Then he'd bring it to us and we'd say, yeah, and then. Right. So on the issue of notification of property owners, how can we resolve that? I mean, my recommendation had been that you just simply have post it on the website. People can open that spreadsheet and all it has is an address and then the invasives. I mean, there's no identifying information as to who owns that property. And I don't think there's any liability for that. It's public, I mean, it's public observation from the public spot, right? I mean, because we had talked about that earlier, whether that is some kind of a personal information breach. I don't know how to put it, but you know what I'm saying, that somehow that's personal, that can't be public
Privacy.
information. Not privacy is the word.
And well, one thing you could potentially do in the budget is to be for mailing to people.
I don't want to mail 761 letters.
Um,
It was just easier to give them access and just tell them that it's there.
Will they have access to the total database so they can look at their neighbors, or will they only have access to their own property?
Like $380.
Yeah.
Probably everyone's, just because I mean, you could walk down any street and look for yourself. It's not.
I mean, the privacy issues are, if you can see it from a public area, it's all, you can take pictures, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, look at Google Maps, right?
You cannot look in
Street View,
windows.
right?
Resident
Google
windows,
Street
which
View,
you are
yeah.
not doing. So it's a privacy issue from what because I fly a drone, and that's the restriction about you can take pictures of anything from a public area, including the air. You can't look into windows.
Okay, so caveat, but
We didn't look into windows, and we didn't
Yeah.
use a drone, and we didn't even go to backyards, so
You did everything accordingly, so there's no
Yes.
privacy issue that I know of.
and you can put the disclaimer on the bottom also, on this, disclaimer right on that spreadsheet, or however, you format it, but, I mean, does anybody have an issue with taking that approach? I think that's the easiest way to do it, by far. Because then somebody that's interested can do it, and an advisory can go out to say, hey, listen, write down everything that was done, how it was done, you collected it, and by the way, if you want to see it, this link, and it'll open up, and you can actually see if your property's on here and what's on there. And I think that would be.
Almost like e-track it. Track it if you want up on building permits on your property, you could just put in your address and it would up.
No, not even that sophisticated. This is just, here's all the information, find your address, and if it's not there, then apparently we didn't see any invasives from the street. Maybe you have them in your backyard, we don't know.
all the streets are in alphabetical order and all numericals.
Does that sound reasonable with the disclaimer on there, of course, IFS disclaimer, and then again, it would be introduced to the public through an advisory, or through the letter, whatever the town's sending out, to say, here it is. And then we can continue to use that outreach also. You can have it, whatever the link in your booth, make a card for it, pass it out to residents, and reach
How
them
many
any way we
pages is
can.
that?
I don't know, I printed it out in microscopic print because it was a lot of pages.
161 lines, you mean? Yeah, that's probably.
Yeah, it was a lot of pages.
Now, is the township capable of supporting a spreadsheet like that and allowing access to it? One question.
I mean, spreadsheets.
No, actually, you'd print it in a PDF format, or you put it in some format that you can't.
Change it or?
Adulterate, yeah.
Yeah, alter it.
I mean, there's security risks for anything. I don't know. What,
It's
There's some questions there that I'd probably want to talk to the attorney,
an
some
attachment.
guidance from staff on.
I mean, I think you can go to the town website now and open up download attachments and download things.
the other question is, what about all the absentee landowners? You're gonna get them to look at the website.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
getting
we
anybody
don't
to
get
look at-
everybody, I suppose, but
If 50
It's one of the things is that if someone is really interested and they have invasive plants, and they probably either already know, but not sending them something saying, yes, you have invasive plants, and I don't think you're gonna get a lot of uptake on get this, going through and searching through a big list to find their house.
I think if they already know and they're there, even if you were to send something to them, it would probably just go right into the garbage anyhow.
There's a lot of people here from somewhere else. May not have any idea that Chevrolet is a,
put it in the water. I mean, again, you
paper.
can put that into the water bill if you want, because that's a freebie. If we get, if you get permission, that'd be another way to drive, I mean, what you're trying to do is drive traffic to that site, right? So, yeah, that's one way to do it. The advisory is the other way to do it, but we just have to have that document up and people can look and see. And then again, my thought was it would be nice and that's more work, obviously, but have invasive to native alternatives for people. Next step, or maybe you just have then.
a generic paper. You don't have to have a specific, that homeowner. They replace, just list of the natives and then list of a possible replacements on a single piece of paper. You only looked at 10, wasn't it?
Yeah, that already exists.
So that, that's easy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, there's another supporting, people say, okay, now what do I do? You can say, hey, then you hit this link and we can show you what to put in. I mean, just boom, boom, 1, 2, and that could accomplish the task. I think.
I'm just looking at that list from Sanibel saying that they kind of already have that stuff.
What stuff, the cross?
Like the slideshow of native plants.
Right, and we've talked about that, and actually, the PAO said she'd be happy to put those on there, I think. The thing is, I mean, just for all your benefit, is that you don't want to post stuff that has to be maintained. Typically, links are the best, unless you have a document, which is fine, but anything that needs updating is managed. So links are great, because then obviously the onus of updating is on the jump page that you're sending. So we need to get that content done.
Yes,
Good, I mean,
yes, we do need to get the content on
Sure,
there.
let's do it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think there's some to-dos in there, but we'll get Rose to work with the PIO with me to do it, and Chad, big teamwork. We good on the update, vegetation management? Hey, Rose,
Yes.
you with us?
Yes, I am. I
Okay,
was just thinking about using some of that money we have to offer to people who comply a gift certificate for a Native Plant Society. Maybe just have some type of a raffle, everybody who did it, we throw their name in and one person gets we could keep track of who actually takes the time to look at it. And then all of those people's name would be in the bowl, and we'll pick one and they get their
Actually,
$50 to go to nature.
that was,
that during the pop-up that we were doing a raffle and the town attorney said that was,
Can't do it.
can't do raffles.
Okay, no raffles.
no, but
Gambling, a sense of gambling.
I will tell you that one thing that was suggested to me is that if we're going to offer money to replace trees that are out, then we can also just say, here, you get a certain amount of credit, and you bring in your receipt, the tree you purchased to the town, and they'll give you. You don't want to necessarily give gift certificates to a business, because then you're.
Right.
so it's just something to
That's a good
think
idea.
about.
That's a great idea, Rose.
Just thinking.
Okay. Moving on to manatee conservation. I believe this was added by Chad in your absence. So,
Appreciate that.
You want to fill them in, or who's going to give the update?
Well, so my update, I know we've talked a little bit, Chad's reached out to a few people at FWC, and Bill and I have touched base, but I've continued kind of just looking into this, reaching out to, I probably spoke with 10, 15 different biologists throughout FWC, throughout the state. Actually, Becky, I left a voicemail on your phone today about it. But I'm trying to get the consensus of what FWC individuals feel about a propeller mandate, if it would help or hurt the manatees and the turtles and the dolphins in general. And I'll email out a list that you can get, but I have a list of names that generally everybody really thinks it would be a very beneficial thing, a lot of different reasons. And then I went to locals. I did start a petition at the end of December, and just between that, we have just under 20, we're almost at 25,000 as of right now. We have 22,532 people that have signed the petition for it. Out of that, about 15,000 people are in the county, in the area. And something I've just been trying to, if we can't go that route, we also discussed maybe having a GPS mandate where these people are having to stay within the channels, and then if they're going too fast in manatee zones and that, it starts beeping at them and things. Because what I did find out is there's just under 6,000 registered boats in Lee County. We have 10 to 13 sheriff vessels within the whole county. For FWC, it's 5 to 10 vessels within the whole county. And these don't run all the time. They don't run every day. They run as needed sometimes. So I either think because of the mortality rates of the manatees, we lost more last year than we have ever before in a year. And over, I think it was like 300 of those within the state was in our county. And the speeding is getting outrageous back here. And I know just the propeller guards are not a fix of that, but GPS or propeller guards are something we need to step up what's happening, because it's outrageous. These manatees are starving, and on top of that, they have to deal with 40% more boats on the water since COVID. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying. We need to set a precedent of what are we going to do about it. We have the ability, and we have the locals that do care about it. The business owners I've started reaching out to, once we have a discussion, they start opening up to the idea of this might not be such a bad thing, because it does protect their equipment, it does protect their things. So I just feel like we have to do something. We tell these manatees apart by their scars, and I know a big thing that comes up about the propeller guards is then we still have blunt force trauma. We're going to have that either way. The propeller guard not only will protect from the slicing and trauma of that, it is also a visual representation of our community stepping up to show that we care, and also it is one more thing that these renters have to see that reminds them there's seagrass out here, there are speed zones, there are wildlife. It is illegal to feed manatees, dolphins, and sea turtles. It is illegal to get close to these animals, and these things. So I just think we need to do something about it. And I know that it comes up, how are we going to enforce it? Who's going to enforce it and whatnot? But I feel like if it's something we want to do as a culture and a community, we figure it out. All right, soapbox speech.
Feelings from the manatee is there's a lot of speeders. They should be done. I think it's enforcement of the law probably would do
100%, yeah.
better to save the manatees, to get them slow down. A guard, they're going to hit them faster.
Pardon me.
I mean, I heard there were 2 more boats that's supposed to be in the area.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say it, I rarely see enforcement boat, either FWC or sheriff's. Not never. I have one friend, if I go fishing with him, every time I get pulled over. He's got a ankle bracelet. But.
Did we ever find out whether or not we asked the rental companies that are on?
There's like gray area from what we kind of found out is there's things that as a city we you know, we can, you could probably say it better, Chad or Bill. Okay.
Okay, so-
But there's things that, there's like a gray area. We can't just go say that, you know, you need this, because a lot of that is enforced by federal. But as a city, we can essentially, you know, please correct me if I'm wrong, go in and say like, this is a new ordinance for our seagrass beds or manatees or wildlife that we just need to it needs to happen. But again, like who enforces that is the.
And I have neighbors who actually say they're willing to donate money to support having more sheriffs on the water. I don't know if that would help, but if we could get support that way.
Isn't it supposed to be like 1,000 to 1 for every 1,000 registered boats? There's supposed to be one sheriff in the. What the?
I don't know if there's anything, but I mean, I think enforcement.
But that's just registered boats. That's not out of state, because people register in landlocked states for cheaper registration, you know, and they live here year round. So.
Oh, as far as though, and I understand what you're saying, Greg, and the town council has voted recently to give more money to the sheriff for more patrols. Now, as far as the point goes, and I was a little surprised with the result talking to Chad, but, you know, when talking about prop guards and the blunt force, the experts on these marine mammals was not particularly enthusiastic about that as a solution. But I do know, talking to Chad and what he was suggesting, and what a friend of mine who services boats, that there is a way to get the GPS mapping boats where you come up with blackout areas. And then when you go into those areas, it beeps. So what that does is it does something that the guards don't do. And one is it can help keep people out of seagrass beds, which are one of the reasons why the manatees are dying, is because they're starving, right? Might help preserve the seagrass beds better. And it's just a matter of, you know, it's an additional tool. Doesn't mean it's exclusive of everything else, but it's an additional tool. Now, I would imagine with those, people can probably just turn them off. Really want to be that way, you know. But it's an idea, and I don't think it's a matter of, do we want to try to develop that idea, to find out, talk to the rental boat companies if they already have something there and it's something they can do that is a no cost kind of thing to them.
I know the rental companies mandate they leave the GPS on so they don't go outside the boundary already,
The boundary of where
they're allowed to operate.
don't go to Sanibel if they're not allowed
Right.
to Sanibel, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm all like, I love the GPS idea. It's just we need something. We need to do something.
Well, I passed this around, and this is something that FWC has sent back of them. And I'm thinking that go to rental companies, actual boat that they're renting out.
So some of the things that I've figured out talking to rental companies specifically is that they only go so far with education, and education only goes so far with their clientele.
But if it's on the boat and they're renting the boat and pick it up, even if it's, you know, someone pick it's information about manatees. And people love to read about manatees. I'm just saying that it's obviously made, I believe, for that. The FW something like this. It's laminated both sides. I'm not sure what the purpose was for it, but I would think.
FWC also has a list of things you need to know to operate a boat.
Right, it's all about
So it's about
manatee and
boats,
boating information, and, you know, one way we could do is go and talk to some of the rental places and see if they would be interested. Sometimes education, I know, you know, we talk about education, but sometimes even if it was somebody on the boat that had never picked this up, read it.
Another, I don't think those two ideas are mutually exclusive.
Right, yeah, no, I'm all for that. I'm just saying, like, there's also speed zone signs.
Right.
You don't need a license to have a boat in Florida.
You're born after 96 or
87.
87?
87. But you don't even need you just need to take an online course. The rental companies are telling their people to just click through. It's supposed to be an hour some long course, and they get it done within 5 minutes. While I was at a couple of these places, I overheard that. Just click through it. So my point is all the education in the world, these people just want the key so they can go out and drink and have a good time. And it does come down to enforcement. So these people are outside the channel, flying through just the mooring field even, without regard.
You know, this Florida in general is, somebody came up to me at the pop-up that just popped into my head and said, you know, I'm really sick of nobody using crosswalks around here and letting their dogs,
Okay.
you know, I won't say it, but letting their dogs all over the place. And, you know, I was in California, you put 1 foot in the, without walking on a crosswalk, you get a
Unique to
date.
California, though, yeah.
Very quick to
With the ticket.
write the ticket.
Okay, so that's a lot of food for thought, right? I mean, I don't think there's a motion here today on this. And,
I just
need
didn't,
to
I
think
just
about
didn't
it.
want it.
Right.
Sorry. I just didn't want it dropped.
sure, no,
Because I know
and
the sea guards, if the propeller guard can't happen, we have to do something. We have 300 to 500 manatees that migrate through here to go up to Manatee Park and back every year.
And I don't think, just to keep the topic for time, I don't think anyone's arguing we need to do something about manatees. So, you know, and there are mutual ways to do it. I think though at this point, given some of the advice that Chad's been given, I think the next step is to really, if you're interested, Rob, to look in these devices and find out what can be done. I mean, you can make something, because, you know, I don't know what the level of programming is. It's just a map thing where you make a, you know, black ring and
GIS,
say,
yeah,
it'll
GIS
beep as soon
layer,
as you go into
basically.
this area, like they already have when they go out of an area. If there's also a thing where we know where the wakeless zones are, and if they're going, you know, 20 miles an hour in a wakeless zone,
Maybe even,
beep at them.
was that you I was talking about with governor on the boat? No?
Yeah, FWC said that may be like a health and safety issue. Sudden or.
Yeah, I think
you
that kind
have
of,
a medical emergency.
I think the GPS thing has less, will probably get less of a pushback from the marine authorities, because with a prop guard, you're actually changing the mechanics of a boat.
But it doesn't.
Well, I know what you're saying, but you're putting equipment on the boat in a part, you know, in a section of the boat that is important for its operation.
I
safe
should say it
operation,
doesn't for a pontoon boat operating at slow speed.
right? So I'm just saying, you might get more pushback from that when you do it from a GPS unit, which is an optional piece of equipment. It's not gonna shut down the engine when they go into a black area. It's gonna beep at them annoyingly.
Okay.
Okay, so for the sake of time, we do need to move along here, gang.
It sucks to be the last one on the heavier item, the last on the agenda list.
Exactly, well, I mean,
I spoke my
that was a little
piece.
too much, actually. I wouldn't have allowed it, but Chad talked me into it for Rob's sake, so.
Appreciate it, Chad.
So, member items and reports, and I will say that no point's really up for discussion. You can make your report and,
What about good citizen?
did I skip that? I did
Yeah.
skip that. Okay, so has everybody got a Murphy?
Mary Rose had the one, the 3-tiered water.
Yeah, we
We
still
have,
have that.
we have
We
one in the
banked it.
bank, yeah,
I
but
don't
does
have any
anybody
more.
have one? Okay, we make a withdrawal.
Okay.
I make a motion, we empty our bank, with the Wyndham maintenance, technician and his, local rainwater system.
Second that.
Any discussion, any opposition? Motion carries. Very good, and, I am due actually on the Shoreline Spotlight calendar, and I don't have a subject. Everything depends.
You
Dark
could do the
skies.
butterfly now, the Atala.
Yeah,
Guys, yeah.
yeah,
Or
so.
dark sky.
First guys, that's right up your alley.
And Mayberg had a request for me for March. So, good, so excellent. Members' items and reports, starting with, Rose Larkin.
Quick thanks to Rebecca, because as the article came out today on wildlife provides free entertainment, the very last section of it was basically inspired by her. And so I actually drafted that section and sent it to her for review, and she added some comments and information to it, and I want to thank her. And then the other thing is, off of Times Square, the pier, which they just redid recently, they took down the monofilament recyclable containers and they didn't put them back. For all those people fishing off the pier, there's no place to put monofilament. My comment.
They're supposed to be updating all that signage.
Yes, well, yeah, he's talking about the actual,
Yeah,
the tube, the suction tube, yeah. Jennifer?
I was actually gonna talk about that. That was one of my. Eve Haversfield is in talks with, getting those. Cool.
Who's doing that, Jen?
Pete Haversfield is.
Oh, okay, good.
Talks about the sign, maybe signs. Cool for the mono. Okay. Larry talked about DEP sending us a bunch of pop-up information and swag backpacks. I am the new Fort Myers Beach Osprey monitor, so if you're out there and about and you see any issues or have any questions or see a new, please let me know. I'm also giving a talk on March 8th, invited by the San Carlos Bay Sail and Power Squadron talks, and I've got a lot of information on boating and pump outs that I'll be sharing with them.
Awesome. How about you, Superstar?
Additional comments.
It's not a sin. I guess I'm in row here. So a couple things. One, big shout out to Publix, leading by example. I mean, they're outfitting the entire property with narrowband amber LED lights.
Bravo.
They've been an issue because of that straight sight line right to the beach. So, I mean, just absolutely excellent example, leadership there. I did present the motion that we passed at the last meeting and presented to council for the name change, and that's under consideration.
Let me just point out, because one thing I was talking to Steve about, now the council's going to take this up. We need a resolution to do it, right? And the name that you've been kicking around is what, the Marine and Environmental Resource Task Force?
That's
Marine
correct.
and Environmental Marine Resource Force, MRF.
But you've been too many Marines in there.
You had it
Yeah.
right.
Another idea that came up is the Marine and Uplands Resource Task Force, because Marine and Environmental is kind of redundant in a lot of ways, because they're talking about the environment of the marine. And then if you do, when we took the Master Naturalist classes, Uplands is one of the classes, Coastal is another. So you're talking about basically both land and water. And then the acronym is MRF instead of MIRF.
Here.
That
So
would be,
for consideration, and this will come in front of council, but we probably need to know what MRF wants to be called.
MRF. I mean, MRTF doesn't spell MRF. So MERT can spell MRF too, I suppose, but.
Whatever your preference is. We'll put it in ordinance, see how it flies.
I would say, I think that because it's for outreach, I think the upland would blow people away. They have no idea what that means down here, unless you're a master naturalist to some degree, or that's just my opinion.
What about just the Environmental Task Force?
No, Marine, no, I think,
I
I'm solid with,
personally,
I'm solid with our
good.
current proposal.
I am too.
I voted against it, but. All right, I mean, Councilman Bill Veach is asking.
No, I think I have consensus, I know. I don't know how that's all gonna fit on this
Yeah,
little
that
sign,
sounds
but
Well, he did it with a little, he's a wry guy. He liked putting a U in there.
Well, it's where the Marine Resource Task Force was gonna be, I wrote it down, and Mae Murphy told it to me. I even had a song, E-I-E-I-O. There was a song, but it was supposed to be Estero Island Environmental
Organization.
or something like that. E-I-E-I-O.
All right, continuing with my report. But there does require resolution and ordinance change for that, and that's it.
No, I think, I hate to bring it up again, but we have a situation with dogs off leash every morning. And I think it's the people who live on the beach and are wise to the fact that we have so little patrol that they can let their dogs off lead whenever they feel like it, and then just keep their eyes open, and if they see a beach vehicle coming, grab the lead. It's really annoying because they chase the birds every morning, and I try and remind people, and by now they laugh at me because they know there's no enforcement. We're almost at the point where There's gonna be nobody with their dogs on lead. There were 3 people this morning, and I have photos. I really don't know what to do at this point. Dad? I will.
You have a question regarding that. So if we make an environmental, something with a loose dog or anything like that, or lighting issues, is that considered where our name is listed and our address? So everything that we complain about, our name, full name, and our home address is listed. Even if under
I think it's a state.
Oh, right, but I'm just saying.
Thanks, Chad, I will.
Rob?
Mine was about the pier signage and the tubes. I'm good.
Excellent. Public comment? Any more, anything? Okay, so, agenda for next meeting. How about that little point there? Let's go back through. What has to be reviewed? The MRF budget? Finalization maybe, or at least, certainly, get it, dark skies. I think
Yes.
that'll be a follow-up on what's going on.
Shrimp Fest?
Shrimp Fest, yes.
No, beforehand though, too.
We have one more? Yeah, before then?
Well, if we're deciding the 23rd about the boat or not.
Yeah, no, this is just on,
Organizational
To talk
meeting.
about, oh,
just, last minute stuff.
Yeah. Andy, what?
Put 5 minutes on there, right. How much candy to bring? Like, vegetation management?
I don't know, maybe. We'll go with it.
I think so. I mean, again, it just
That's a 5, yeah.
doesn't have to be a 30-minute discussion. Conservation, unless somebody has something to bring, then
Nope, you can take that off.
that off for now. And, I think that's perfect. Pretty good with that?
Yes.
Anything else that slid in there, like Chad? Joan, you weren't here, okay, so, any motions to adjourn?
Are we starting 2 o'clock
Move
next
to
month?
adjourn.
I think Chad has to look into the rooms available.
By notification, we'll know whether we meet at 2 next month.
We have to read our emails.
All right, 5:57?
Move to adjourn.
I don't have a fancy phone like.
Adjourn, 5:57.